welcome everyone. Thank you so much for your interest and for your input that I'm sure is about to come and for being a part of this. We'll now start with the introduction of the working group. Why don't we start over here to the left?
Good evening. Hello, good evening. I'm Dan McElhenney. I'm the Caltrans Chief Deputy District Director for the Bay Area.
Hello, I'm Brad Marsh from the City of Legislature.
Good afternoon, Gary Phillips, Mayor of San Rafael.
I'm Beach Cool from the town of Ross, sitting in for Tom McInerney from San Anselmo.
I'm Diane Steinhauser, the Executive Director of TAM.
I'm Alice Fredericks, councilperson from the town of Tiburon.
I'm Carla Condon from the Town Council, Town of Corte Madera.
Diane First, Mayor of Corte Madera.
Katie Rice, Marin County Board of Supervisors.
Dan Hilmer, Mayor, City of Larkspur.
And I'm Gina Bartlett, Center for Collaborative Policy, the facilitator.
Thank you very much. We'll begin now with any corrections or additions to the draft minutes from the meeting of May 20th. Are there any corrections or additions from the working group? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll move.
Second.
And a second. Any objections? The minutes are approved. We'll move now to an agenda review and follow-up items from previous meetings. Is there a staff report on this?
The one follow-up item I did want to mention is that we believed initially that we would be looking at new proposals today for both the roadway, highway, as well as the bike and pedestrian. So in our meeting framework, we had a lot of looking at all new proposals today. But based on the volume of ideas that we received from everyone, we're going to take the roadway options today, and we're going to come back on June 24th to discuss the bike and pedestrian options. And you know, we did not estimate this size of group. Can I just get a show of hands, perhaps, of those that may be returning on June 24th, where we're going to dig into new bike and pedestrian options so we know what size? Okay. We're going to get a bigger room. Thank you for that. So we welcome you back on June 24th. We will try and locate a larger room location, and we'll let you know that both in email transmittals as well as on our website. So that's the only minor change from the previous meeting.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your dedication to this process. We are all spending a lot of time on it, and it is just extraordinary to see such public involvement. We're moving on now to consider a process for dissemination of working group information to the members' constituents.
Yes, let me give a short report on that. And again, I think I have 50 copies, but we will make this available on our website this evening if any more of you want this. The purpose of this item in particular is to ask of the working group members how you might want to capture additional information on the proposals and on the process. And we as staff have come up with a couple of ideas. One of them is a project update. Let me just pass these around to the working group. We would like to offer you members a regular project update done every 2 weeks on the status of this effort. Here's some, yeah, thank you, Gina. Here's some for the public. Let me keep one. This is one tool for us to use and make available to you to communicate locally within your towns and communities, is to make these updates available to you. This comes from our chair, the TAM board chair, Alice Fredericks, with some key information on members of the working group. The second tool we wanted to offer you, working group members, again, is to come to your councils to give an update of this process and the status, or to any other interest groups you have in your community to give updates. And staff would like to offer that to you as well. So that's what we have to offer in terms of additional outreach process for collecting and disseminating information. And we'd be glad to hear of any other suggestions or ideas you have in that regard.
Does the working group have any comments or suggestions? Seeing none, does anyone in the public have something to add to this that they feel would be helpful? Seeing none, we're moving on. We're moving now to agenda item 5A, which is presentation of newly proposed highway local roadway improvement options from the public. I'd like to frame this meeting a little bit for all of us, because as you can imagine, presenting a freeway project in 7 minutes is quite a daunting process, and understanding 7 of them is even more challenging. So our job today is to identify any of the feasible alternatives to the current proposed project. We'll consider, the working group will actually probably be considering how the project relates to a problem set that we all agreed on earlier in this process. That included cost, delay, design flaws, problems identified specifically in the set, environmental impacts, whether we have to acquire other people's property in order to build the project. Having done this, the working group will provide direction to the staff to take any of the feasible alternatives that need further study, or any of the elements of the alternatives, and to work with the submitters to further define the work, to develop a cost analysis of any further work, how much it'll cost to look at it, engineer it, and have something that is understandable and presentable and feasible, and then develop a budget request to take to the full TAM board and request funding for any further studies. I'd like to reassure you all that none of us take this charge lightly. We would not be putting this much time into it, but for the fact that it's important to us and to all of you. The public has invested time, thought into developing alternatives. Everyone should be acknowledged and thanked, including people who are in the audience. But I'd like to just read the list of people who have actually submitted projects. They include Dave Bracken, Dwayne Price, David Schoenbrunn, Robert Harrison, Jana Hale and Marin Deserves Better, Scott Stokes, and Thomas Jakovics. I want to thank all of you once again. I want to ask the presenters when they come up to respect the 7 to 10 minute time limit. Maybe 7 minutes to present, 2 or 3 minutes to wrap up. Make your presentations as succinct as possible so that we, the working group, have time to ask questions to make sure we fully understand what you feel is the best solution. It would really be helpful to us if you focus on the elements of your plan and the problems they address, and that you remember that many of the alternatives that will be presented today represent the same goals you, the presenter, at any given moment want to achieve. It's in everyone's interest to see that all the feasible alternatives get due consideration, so please respect the time limit to the best of your ability. We'll move on now, and is this the order?
The order is on the wall here.
And should I turn it over to you?
Yeah, that would be good. Diane, did you have any?
We appreciate everybody turning these in a timely manner. We've spent a lot of time, both the TAM staff as well as Caltrans, looking at these alternatives. We developed a document, that I'm throwing around, that's on the table over there. If you don't have a copy, please get one, dated today, which shows in a very brief format what we believe are the beneficial features and some of the challenges associated with each of these alternatives. So we're going to be reviewing this for the working group members and for you, members of the public, as we hear of the alternatives from each presenter. So please refer to this document, and we hope at the end of the day that we get some direction from you working group members on what we should work on further and what we might want to set aside. So that's the staff's request of the working group today.
Great.
And that, with that.
Well, I have the pleasant job of being the timekeeper for all the presenters. And so I've talked to all of you. We have up to 10 minutes. At 10 minutes, the mic is off. It's really, we've got so many people that have great ideas, and as the chair said, we really want to hear from everyone, so we're going to ask that you respect that. To that end, I'm going to give the presenters a 3-minute warning, a 2-minute warning, a 1-minute warning, and then we'll head down to the time is up, and that'll be for the 10 minutes. Okay, so I really appreciate everyone's cooperation on that. Mr. Jackowitz, do you want to come on up and get set up? Do you have a presentation?
I just,
Okay.
we don't have a present.
Okay, no problem. Just give me 1 second then.
Would it be possible to make the presentation on the screen a little bit larger and higher? Because it's
Okay.
difficult to see the details. From the
Okay,
distance.
we'll work on that.
Thank you.
And then members, to just reiterate what Diane said, is we really are asking, we aren't sure how much time we're going to have at the end to talk with you, but keep in mind what addresses the problem statement, what merits further study, and is there anything that can be taken off the table, so to speak.
And we were planning for a working group to ask the presenters questions.
We will have up to 10 minutes of presentation. I think that staff have prepared something to a couple minutes after each one, and then we'll have a couple questions. And I'm thinking it's 15 minutes. At 15 minutes, we probably need to shift to the next in order to get through the session. Does that sound okay with everyone? It's going to be tight, but we'll do it. Okay, so Mr. Jackowitz, thank you so much, and we'll get started with you.
Where is the microphone?
You know, I guess we don't have a mic. I said I was going to be grabbing the mic. It was so great, but I don't have a mic to grab. So, if you could just project out this direction, that's probably a good place to stand, honestly.
Well, my name is Thomas Jackowitz, and I'm commuting from East Bay last 25 years. And I'm forced each time I leave Richmond Bridge on a surface road to connect to 101. In an evening when I'm going home, I'm again from 101, I'm forced on a surface road to Francis Lake Boulevard, another one, to cross over to 580 or and get to the Richmond Bridge. So I am the problem. I really represent the problem, and I've represented it for the last 25 years. There shouldn't be a problem, and wouldn't be a problem if you follow not my recommendation, the Caltrans recommendation. Caltrans wanted to connect 580 and 101 25 years ago in Sunderfell. Freeway to freeway, it makes sense. Once you do that, all the pressure for Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, all the pressure from the surface roads will much lessen. Will not be resolved, but will be lessened. And anything before that, it's really just patching job, in my opinion. That is my proposal to direct your attention to a 580-101 interconnection in Summerfell. That's number one. Number one, I'm requesting as an individual from Caltrans to produce all those plans that they had 25 years ago. They are forced to bury it because of political reasons, no other. And get this into program, because if you don't do it, you didn't do it 20 years ago, if you don't do it today, you will be forced to do it maybe 25 years from now. You can't avoid it. The geography of that location is such, it begs for the connection. And that's my proposal. Number one. The number two is same thing. For 25 years, I'm going from Barnia Shopping Center to my office location, because that's where I'm doing the banking. And each time I want to cross the Corte Madera Creek on a surface road, I'm unable to. I am forced on the freeway. So there is a disconnect again. Which I mean by disconnect, I would like to cross the Corte Madera Creek on a surface road, away from the freeway, away from weaving. And Caltrans engineers 20, 25, or 30 years ago, when they built the bridge, they had this in mind because they built the bridge structure in such wide enough to carry additional lanes of 2 or 3. And they began requesting from Caltrans to come up with the original plans they had and implement it. Now, that location again begs for that implementation. Once you implement that, again, it takes away lots of the problems we're facing today. Thank you very much. That's all I have.
Thank you. We're going to hear a few words from staff, and then we'll have maybe 1 or 2 questions for you, sir.
Thank you, working group members. Bill Whitney, I'm the project manager for the Greenbrae Corridor Improvement Project. Just like to tell you a little bit about the process that we have gone through to provide an initial assessment of the options. TAM staff, for your direction, has looked at all of these options and prepared an initial assessment. We worked with our technical team of traffic engineers, civil engineers, highway engineers, to further refine this initial assessment. And then we've had a meeting with Caltrans, a workshop, well-attended, where we went through the options and further refined our initial assessment. I'd like to say that when you propose to modify something, just like your house, if you're going to build, remodel your house, you have to bring it up to current standards. So that's what we're faced with all of these options, as well as the option that we proposed, is when you're improving it, you have to bring it to current modern standards. So I'd like to just address a couple of the options that Mr. Jakovic presented. The first one was his freeway-to-freeway connector in Santa Fe. We have looked at that in the past. The working group actually had a presentation on one of the movements of that freeway-to-freeway interchange, and we felt that it had benefit. That it does provide a direct freeway-to-freeway connector. What we found with our previous investigation, that the westbound 580, so westbound 580 coming from the Santa Rosa Bridge, going southbound on Highway 101, we learned that there was a number of traffic issues that caused, so it did cause congestion and potential backup of Highway 101 in the southbound direction in the morning. We did look at the other movement, which is the northbound 101 to eastbound movement, and we feel there are benefits to that. The proposal that Mr. Jakovic proposed have a few challenges. They could be further refined, but a few of the challenges that we noted were that it does cause slight out of direction travel. It requires new approaching westbound lane system on the west side of I-580. So I know that's complicated, but we did have that summarized in the supplemental packet. And then we have a need to widen the existing southbound US 1 structure on ramp. When we looked at that proposal, we noticed that there was potential significant right-of-way impacts that would require the taking of businesses and potential parking structures for the shopping center. Then the other proposal that Mr. Jakovic proposed was the Cordillera Creek Crossing. This proposal is very similar to the proposal proposed by Marine Reserves Better. And what they are proposing, Thomas summarized, is widening the eastbound Sir Francis Drake on-ramp 2 lanes. So I think that's the key element of this proposal. Continuing south, and then having an off-ramp at Lucky Pfeiffer. So a couple of challenges that we noted with that proposal is that it creates 2 merges on the Sir Francis Drake ramp, followed by a weave between Sir Francis Drake on-ramp and Pfeiffer, and then a merge onto the highway in a very short distance. I mentioned that as a challenge. That is something that would absolutely need to be evaluated further. With that, I'd like to open it to questions that you may have.
Okay, so questions for either Mr. Jakovic or staff on this proposal. Go ahead.
On the northbound 101 to eastbound 580 concept,
Does that also impact the public right-of-way and impact private properties?
We think it does, yes.
And could you just describe where that route would be located?
Well, as you're going up and over Cal Park Hill on 101 and coming down, the businesses to your right or to the east of Highway 101, there's a number of businesses in that loop, and they would be affected by the development of such a proposal.
Thank you.
Diane?
Yes, I noticed that in the supplemental information that we got this afternoon, it states that the US 101 southbound connector has previously been investigated and discussed by the working group. I don't believe it's been investigated by the working group, and any discussion was cursory at best. So I just wanted to clarify that and say that, you know, if this turns out to be something the working group wants to pursue, I just want the record to state that we have not previously discussed that. Thank you.
Hey, Gary, then I'll come back to you. Alice?
Excuse me. First, certainly appreciate the input. At the same time, it strikes me that this focuses on a slightly different area than most of our attention has been directed. The second thing, I'd be curious as to what the structure looks like that would accomplish what is being proposed.
The proposal from Mr. Yakovic is very conceptual, and so it's difficult to ascertain, you know, those type of details at this level.
Mr. Jackowitz, do you have anything to add on what the structure would look like?
No, I really don't have, because it's what
Okay.
Bill is saying is very conceptual. It was drawn up by even somebody else, not so much by me. But what I'm saying is what Caltrans never had came up with 25 years ago. Let's get those records open
Great.
and go back to it.
Thank you. Alice?
I'll just add that I think it's a significant structure.
Significant structure, okay.
So, Bill, was that the presentation that Dave Parisi gave us?
Yes.
It is. In the presentation that he gave us, which was quite detailed, I remember, just remembering from a couple of months ago, that he had questions about whether it would address the congestion on 101 in certain places that the proposed project addresses. He also thought that it would be a structure that would have to be at least 80 or 90 feet to go over the existing structures up towards San Rafael. Am I on the right report that he gave? And that it would add 1.5 miles more or less to the trip over to 580. Am I remembering this correctly?
Correct, yes.
So we did get quite a detailed report on the concept of the freeway to freeway connection.
Correct. And that was when we were discussing traffic-related numbers and impacts. So the discussion was focused more on the traffic congestion impact, not so much on the height of the structures or the arrangement of the structure.
Thank you.
Here, I'll come to you, then back to you, Diane.
On that same presentation, what I recall also was numbers with regards to the capacity on the bridge itself, and that it has limited capacity. And frankly, it's a congestion point in itself. If there's more throughput unless and until there's a lane added eastbound on the bridge. Not that I think that should preclude us thinking about this in the future, but I think that an improvement there that has a lot more throughput ends up being moved if the bridge doesn't have the capacity to take it.
And I'm not disagreeing that was what we had discussed. It's really the volume of traffic and some of the impacts. But we never did look at the structures that they were talking about 25 years ago that were rejected for what I understand to be very good reasons. So I'm just saying that we haven't talked about what the design might look like, what the structure might look like, and what the actual specific impacts would be, other than a generalized discussion of the congestion.
It looks like the proposal also requires a 4-lane bridge crossing Corte Madera Creek. Any thoughts from the working group members about the acceptability of that and the environmental impacts associated with that?
I didn't understand it to be 4 lanes, so maybe
Okay.
there's, I mean, I see that in this, but I guess, did you understand it to be 4 lanes?
Yeah, well, maybe my proposal is adding to the marine ones, these are the better proposal. At least an additional lane, yes. One additional lane to separate of the freeway. You can cross it on the surface road, you can cross the creek on the surface road.
So maybe it'd be better to think about this particular structure in the context of the Marin Deserves Better structure, which gives a different context and a different solution, and just move on from this particular option.
That should belong into their proposal, I
Yeah.
think, yes. I just want to emphasize the need for the surface-to-surface crossing.
Thank you. Should we do that, folks? Okay, should we wrap up and go on to the next one? Thank you, Mr. Jackowitz, so much. Okay, the next one is Mr. Dwayne Price, and it's option 2 in your packets. That was 14 minutes.
I'm Dwayne Price from Marksburg, and I have 2 independent proposals, and I want you to understand that they are independent. They're not to be connected. The first proposal is a 3-way undercrossing at Pfeiffer Avenue interchange instead of at Warren. Now, how would you do that? Well, most of you probably know that Warren undercrossing is actually on a hill. On a hill that's about 30 feet high. So basically what we do is instead of dropping down here, we just, as I say, extend that hill by keeping it freeway elevated until it gets across over here and then let it drop down. Now we can extend Pfeiffer. This is Pfeiffer, by the way. Lucky's over here. But we can extend Pfeiffer and just under here so we can access these ramps. We can access River Highway, all this area over here. Now, exactly how the traffic gets from up here down here, and so on, this proposal does not address. You will hear more about those, and in my second proposal, so I'm not going to address that right now. There is a couple of problems here, though, that I do want to indicate. This exit coming off down to industrial, the so-called industrial exit, if it hits Pfeiffer here, and then you want to go over to Redwood right here, that's a very short area, very short thing, and probably would have trouble stacking traffic. So lots of possibilities to address that, and one of those is just Pfeiffer comes up here and takes a left, goes up here to the present exit where it intersects with River Highway. You know, you can stack up traffic there. Another problem with this, of course, on the other side is that this bringing this exit down here to intersect with Pfeiffer, you've got Nellen over here, which is about an arm's length away. That's a mess. So a possibility of that, dealing with that, is to actually stop this off-ramp, bring it over here to Nellen, and that's where you get it, where you access Pfeiffer from there. That's now, why would you want to do this? I see there are 3 constituencies. The first constituency is a regional constituency. Southern Marin, Central Marin. I can make a case that actually it's much broader, even worldwide. But the thing that what I really want to do is I want to save Warren Drive. I don't want freeway exit down here that a lot of people are proposing, because I want to say that as a safe, convenient, attractive passage for bikes and peds is part of our north-south greenway. Putting a freeway interchange there is going to severely compromise that whole plan. You can mitigate the paths and stuff, but you never really mitigate the whole damage. Second constituency I see is a whole community of Larkspur, Corte Madera, some other unincorporated, the boardwalk, and so on. These people are really have a lot of trouble with the congestion. down here on Bella Vista and Redwood. What this undercrossing would do, it would take all these offices and Redwood High School and all these people who want to go north, they just go underneath here, take a left, and they're gone. Instead of going down Bella Vista, taking a left on Warren, taking a left on Redwood, coming back up here, what I call the Warren Dipsy Doodle. Same for if people want to, coming from, see, that's going this way, but going the other way. You got the same kind of problem if you're over here and you want to go south. You got to go all the way down here and come back here and then on here. Instead of just coming here, going over here, and then boom. It seems to be a fairly straightforward kind of thing. And the third constituency is the immediate Pfeiffer industrial neighborhood. It's primarily commercial now. There are some residences on the creek, the boardwalk, the mobile homes, and possibly in the future there may be other residences. But primarily commercial. But now, if you got this, you're right on the freeway. You got immediate access to the freeway. And actually, you get to the other side, even to services that you want to get to on the other side is right there. And
Mr. Price, you're over 10 minutes. Can you wrap up soon?
I am over 10 minutes.
He's only got 5 minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I can't count. This is down counting. Could you excuse me?
Okay, that's good.
No, that's okay. Thank you.
And one of those other little things, you put a bus pad here, you know, you get one to the other, it's at grade. It's a nice little feature. Now, people talk about views. Well, I'm down there a lot. I ride my bicycle to Larkspur, according to San Antonio, a lot, including the speed. And I've looked and I've looked and I've looked, and I can't find really the views that anybody's talking about. They're all already blocked. So if you know of any, please let me know. I'd like to see them. When I have the table here, I have pictures. It's out there. You can also see it online at wordpress.com, which is also on there. If you can see those pictures, you know, tell me, please. As far as noise is concerned, now, if you want to repeal the laws of physics, then maybe there will be more noise, but no. It may change a little bit about where it goes, but all of a sudden it seems to indicate that that's somewhat imperceptible. Whatever. Anytime, you do any freeway work in a developed place like this, you've got to put up sound walls. That's it. This proposal also has another option. That is that you keep that freeway elevated until it gets up to the creek. Now I can see the eyes rolling and the noise is crazy. Well, yeah, but, you know, we're going to have to do that sometime in the next 20 years anyway, or we're going to be underwater. But also, it changes the whole dynamic of that whole area. Because people are going to go up there and they're going to look through there. They're not, you know, look at all these places you can kind of angle across here, you can there, over here. You don't have to have that. You know, so many ways you can do that, you know. And, you know, people say, oh, well, there's this big hulking structure. Well, let me ask you a question. When you first came into this room, you walked in here and you said, oh, there's a wall there. You probably recognize that there's a door there. And I bet you not one of them, 100 of you, knew that there was fluorescent lights in that pattern right there. So, gotcha. And so that's the same thing that would happen here. Consider downtown San Rafael, what it would be like without that freeway elevated. By the way, if you're down there on 4th Street, take a stroll underneath that freeway. Stop right way down there and look up. You will see sky. How many of you knew that? If you did, it's probably because of that accident a few months ago. Okay, a second proposal. Independently, it's just another way of getting from the Redwood Highway area to merge with 101 and from merge 101 back on Pfeiffer. Basically, you get on, elevate, you fly over these guys and merge here. Coming off here, you stay elevated. Actually, not even as high as this bridge, about as high as this bridge. Stay elevated, drop down here, and you come down. Piece of cake. People, again, they'll talk about views and noise. I'll refer you to my previous proposal. Okay. I was going to say something about how difficult all this is going to be. I sincerely recognize just how difficult this is all going to be physically, financially, and politically, but all that good.
Thank you.
I can vouch for Mr. Price. Every time I'm down in the corridor, I see him and Nancy riding through, so they do know the corridor very well. Like all of our proposals today, we have elements that absolutely have beneficial features. Both of the proposals we've observed have increased opportunities to cross the freeway from east to west for both the proposed structures and the existing Warnham undercrossing. We acknowledge that these proposals are really the only proposals that do address the flooding in the area, so congratulations to them on that. A few of the challenges that we've observed was that the designs don't count for the safety-related design standards. There's just a number of design standards, obviously, that need to be developed with these proposals. We feel that the cost to build these structures can be very significant. You have to maintain traffic north and southbound access to the on and off ramps. We could envision building bypass structures to allow for the construction of these proposals, which would likely require additional right-of-way. The proposals do not address the existing weaving conditions in both the north and the southbound directions. So with that, that's a quick summary of our initial assessment, and we'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, to the working group, and if you could direct it to either Bill or Mr. Price, that would be great. Any questions?
And so, do any of these proposed improvements actually address the congestion problems southbound, northbound, and the weave and merge southbound?
We would still have the same conditions that we have summer conditions today. So our initial assessment is no.
Yes, I agree. I think it does.
But what it really clearly does is that it improves the access to crossing the freeway. Yeah, it does that. Yes, Mr. Price.
The second proposal eliminates the weeding of the folks coming, for instance, coming south to get off the project. They do not interact at all with the traffic going from Francis Street. They do not interact. They're above it. It's the same going north.
Can we ask him to just go to his illustration and point point out the,
Like a flyover.
that'd really be helpful.
Okay.
It's a braided ramp.
Well, no, there's only one. Well, okay,
Go
whatever
ahead.
you want to
Can
call
you
it.
point to it, sir? Point to it, please.
Okay, going northbound, here, you go up, and you go over these guys that are trying to get off over here, and then you come back in and you merge up there with the freeway. Coming southbound, you come down here, partway down that bridge, you stay at that level, so you cross over here, and then drop down, and you come back right down to where you are now. So that these folks do not, these guys, these exiting guys, do not interact with any of these people coming down through here. And same here, these folks going up there do not interact with the people trying to get off going that way, because they're all above it.
Above it, and that's all on an elevated structure.
Well, yes, it elevates.
Okay.
That's correct.
Katie?
I was trying to clarify what if it would reduce or have an impact or relieve congestion on east and west or Francis Drake going underneath the freeway, and I'm still not clear if that northbound traffic then that now gets on going north at Industrial and has to drop down and cross the freeway, is that going to continue, or would they be jumping onto the freeway?
That's what this does. It takes that traffic that now has to stop at Francis Drake and then go back on. It takes that traffic, takes up here, goes up over, in this freeway.
So they're coming and getting on at Pfeiffer on the east side of the freeway?
Somewhere along here. I'm not sure exactly where, but somewhere in here.
And then, and then with regards to the height of the structure, and not to be disrespectful, but given the community's real pushback and outcry not to have the elevated structure that was a part of the build project, how does what you're proposing compare height-wise and location-wise to that
The
structure?
height of these things, I would estimate to be about the same height as this. The eastbound to southbound 101, Spencer Street. I'd estimate it to be about that height. Now, I have a picture, I think it's still out there, or ahead, that I took up here in Drake's Landing, looking that way. And you can see that now they would be about that height, would go across there, and they would drop down. And guess what is right behind it? It is that big beige building. Now, if you want to preserve that beautiful view of that big beige building, don't do this. But that's it.
Okay, last question.
Katie anticipated my question, thank you.
Can I go home now?
I guess you can. We'll give you a round of applause. Thank you.
Could I have my slide up?
Hi, David Schoenbrunn, Transdev. And there's my slide. And could I have the pointer? Chopstick? Thank you. Okay. What I'm about to describe here is not complicated, but it is a different approach to typical transportation problem solving. The Greenbrae project is a stunning example of how the standard transportation engineering approach didn't work. So here's another way of looking at things. Rather than throwing money at an expensive structural solution, why not take a surgical approach and try to understand exactly what the problem is first before spending big money? Then a least cost solution can be created. Let's start with what is the problem? Robert Harrison identified two of the big problems in his proposal. The southbound weaving causing congestion near Pfeiffer and northbound congestion around the Industrial Way on-ramp. 5 of the 7 proposals here today call for a new road or structure to solve the Pfeiffer problem. 2 call for a new bridge for northbound 101 on-ramp traffic. 1 calls for a new bridge for local Sir Francis Drake traffic, and another calls for modifications to the existing ramp. My approach is different in that it starts by questioning the assumptions. The Caltrans approach was to identify weaving as the problem and ramp closure as the solution. That might seem reasonable, but was fiercely opposed by Corte Madera. Corte Madera is apparently convinced that closing any of its historic ramps would harm local mobility. Also, there appeared to be serious doubts as to the accident history cited and the significance of weaving. In the interests of resolving this controversy, we are agnostic as to which side is correct. Instead of modeling the problem, we propose to conduct a real-world test. If the Pfeiffer ramp, on-ramp that is, were closed, and that's, wait a minute, this is existing. What about the one bill that was in my packet?
That's what you sent me, David.
That's what it says.
Mine had text on it. It's in the packet.
Oh, it's in the packet. Sorry, I must have.
Here's the on-ramp at Lucky Drive or Pfeiffer.
It's on page 30 in your packets. If you have this handy, there's some out on the table also.
So the question is, what would actually happen to traffic? Would the world as we know it come to an end, or would people adjust? It's an open question, at least in my mind. Because modeling is apparently not trusted, why not try out a closure for a test period, say 2-3 months, something like that? With enough advanced publicity and public information, drivers would adapt to the new realities. We get messages about Doyle Drive, the Parkway, what do they call it, Presidio Parkway closures. That kind of thing could be done. We think drivers would adapt to the new realities. We would then see what happens. By making measurements before and after, something useful should be learned that will allow a decision to be made on the basis of real-world experience and not theory or hypothesis. So the first assumption being tested is that a ramp that has been in existence for roughly a half century or so is vital to the functioning of a commercial district. We know that such a ramp could not be built today due to design guidelines that Caltrans has developed through painful experience over that half century. How would traffic flow be designed if this were a new development? What exists here today could never be built today. And so maybe there's something we can learn from that. Another assumption being tested is that another ramp, this on-ramp here at Industrial Drive, Industrial Way, that is vital to the functioning of the East Side Commercial District. We know that the traffic on Sir Francis Drake at northbound 101, that's over here. Wait, no, it's right here. That this traffic is severely impeded because of this traffic that crosses to go on to 101 North. If that traffic didn't exist, the Sir Francis Drake traffic problems might disappear. So the other part of the test is to temporarily close the on-ramp at Industrial Way. Eliminating the cross traffic would increase the capacity for through traffic on Sir Francis Drake and might seriously improve the level of service there. The staff report raises fears of liability unless everything is done like it always is, with modeling and studies and consultants galore. The rest of the world is moving in another, more experimental direction. Both New York City and San Francisco have conducted tests of innovative new ideas. My understanding is that they just did it to see what would happen if they didn't go through those procedures. So that's my first proposal. What I'm going to say now does not relate to this slide. A second set of proposals is aimed at identifying the major traffic generators and seeing if it is possible to attract enough drivers to use transit and van pooling that congestion is mitigated. There are three target areas. The first is down Sir Francis Drake, namely Marin General Hospital, Marin Catholic, and College of Marin. And there may be other major employers out that way, but those are the three that came to my mind. We're proposing studying all the cars that go there and see where they came from. And that it might be possible to move them onto transit. The Larkspur Ferry attracts many drivers to its parking lots, and they're looking to increase service would attract even more traffic. And so figuring out if shuttle buses could make a significant difference there, particularly under the condition where there's paid parking, so that there's an incentive to use the shuttles, is a question that really needs research. And finally, I strongly suspect that the traffic congestion northbound in the afternoon is caused by vast amounts of traffic entering the freeway here at Tamalpais. That seems to be what brings the whole freeway down to a standstill. And so the question needs to be asked, are these employees of the shopping centers? A careful study of these traffic generators could determine that better transit could accomplish much, especially once SMART is running. Making Sir Francis Drake work better could merit Regional Measure 2 funding because it would improve access to the Richmond Bridge. I would add that the staff evaluation minimizes the potential benefits of transit. My response is that highway engineers and transit planners often see the potential for transit differently. That's just how that goes. A further analysis that I call for in this section would evaluate a recent study that claims that the millennial generation is driving less and that the nation as a whole is driving less since 2004. TAM needs to know if it is planning for way more growth than would be likely to occur. The paper I'm referring to suggests not using current travel growth assumptions and being conservative in building capacity for the future. Makes a lot of sense to me. Finally, I noticed what looked like an inexplicable slowing down of traffic going onto the Richmond Bridge. It gave me an idea for one last very cheap proposal. If there were a flashing message sign right after the Sir Francis Drake merge onto 580, roughly in the area where the off-ramp to San Quentin is, and the flashing message said, "Resume speed," that might remind people that they have an accelerator and that they could actually go the speed limit. And that would move traffic much faster and potentially eliminate the backup onto Sir Francis Drake that then backs up into Larkspur Landing and I suspect onto 101 northbound. And so testing a message sign and doing a study that looks at correlating congestion at the 580 merge to northbound 101 congestion might create a causal link that would enable appropriate mitigation. And I am just ending precisely on time.
Thank you, David.
My apologies to Mr. Schomburg for the graphic mistake.
Didn't hurt.
Okay, you described it well. A number of the elements that we have viewed as part of our initial assessment as beneficial features include that with this temporary test, we are reducing the number of ramps between Sir Francis Drake and Tamalpais. This does eliminate the weaving issues both southbound and northbound. Some of the challenges that we observed was that by doing so, you would be adding more traffic to some of the other ramps, such as the Sir Francis Drake off-ramp, Madeira on and off-ramp, the southbound Tamalpais off-ramp, and the northbound Tamalpais on-ramp. You would potentially be increasing traffic on local streets, such as Tamil Vista Boulevard, Old Redwood Highway, and Tamalpais Drive. We did observe that in the industrial ramp closure, you would be creating an isolated on and off ramp, and this increases the chance for dangerous wrong-way movements onto the freeway. Closing of on and off ramps without an extensive analysis of highway and local road impacts with suitable modifications may cause safety concerns and unacceptable liability. Modifications to address impacts should be considered and implemented as part of any proposed temporary or permanent ramp closures. We also believe that Caltrans would absolutely need to approve these closures and that they would likely require resolutions of local support. As far as the TDM, we support transportation demand management by all means. TDM measures may reduce traffic on the roadway systems, but are often difficult to demonstrate the benefits. As far as the Santa Fe Richmond Bridge corridor, we do believe the addition of temporary signage may be beneficial to congestion for the eastbound Sir Francis Drake merge to I-580. However, modeling of driver behavior in these cases may be difficult.
It would cost more to model it than to test it.
Okay, so let's open it up to members, questions for Mr. Schomburg or staff, or any insights that you have on the proposal. I'll start over here, Brad, and then Gary, and then Carla.
I just had a really quick question for staff, and maybe I missed it, but what were your thoughts on the K-rail barrier? And I know that's common in a lot of the proposals. Do you know what I'm speaking of? The barrier that disallows the Sir Francis Drake traffic from, or the 101 southbound traffic from merging with the Sir Francis Drake on-ramp traffic until after Lucky?
That's in a number of the proposals
Yes.
that you'll see today. You know, that is one way of controlling the traffic, is attempting to merge. You are controlling it physically with the barrier. Whether it's temporary or permanent, we're going to be looking at that in a number of cases.
But, you know, he did allude to the fact that
Speak up, Diane, please.
you're gonna ask these trips to then go to another ramp to exit. So in the morning, 600 to 700 trips per hour in the peak, trying to get to Redwood High School, are gonna either exit at Drake, or they're gonna go down and distribute at Madeira or Tamalpais. So part of what we understood is needed if you're gonna close any of these ramps is what happens at these other ramp locations? Does traffic back up on the highway, causing a new rear-end collision problem? Does traffic then end up on Tamil Vista, Redwood, Tamalpais, which Bill mentioned? And ideally, you would know that before you went out and closed the ramp. You'd have an idea as to where the trips might go, you know, and that's a reasonable type of analysis. Caltrans is going to be hard pressed to close a ramp unless they understand what hazard might be created by putting that traffic at another ramp location. And Bill mentioned that there could be additional traffic at other ramps, at other local streets, and ideally you'd want to make sure you knew that ahead of time.
Had I worked off of my actual drawing, I would have mentioned that the access to Pfeiffer for people who are on the freeway already would be via Sir Francis Drake and then coming over the bridge. And so that would require new signage, temporary.
Yeah, so we're gonna talk more about that later? Is that what I understood?
It's common to a number of other
Right,
proposals.
because
Yeah.
you answered it more than Bill did, but I know that it's coming up multiple times, so I want to put a little post-it in there.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Gary?
Well, I must say I'm intrigued by the thoughts, and it does seem to me that it's not irreversible. That is, if we, I'm not advocating yet, but it seems to me that it's not irreversible if we discover that there are further complications through the test period, then we can take other avenues. But we're talking about $140 million, approximately. This is considerably less. And so I've said I'm intrigued by the idea. I'm glad you brought me forth. I am curious with regard to the funding and the timing, because this would be a delay to an otherwise good project. And so from a funding standpoint of staff, what does this do to the funds we currently, I'll say, have available?
Bill or Diane, do you want to answer the funding question?
You know, if you would like us to study any of these further, for example, do the traffic analysis necessary to know what closing this ramp is going to result in, then we would come back with a proposal to you. We could bring that on June 24th that says, here's the work necessary to study this further, how much time it would take and how much it would cost. So that could be one outlet for any of these proposals is let's study this further, bring back an estimate of what we would need to know and what the costs are. I mean, we have not developed, nor have most of these proponents, a cost figure for this. We're already studying, and we'll have those results on June 24th, taking all the traffic off on Drake. That was a proposal that was studied, an early version of the alternative that came out in the environmental document. It's also part of the Marin Deserves Better proposals. Let's exit all the traffic at Drake and not let people exit at Pfeiffer. We'll bring those results back. You can kind of see what those impacts and costs are. So I think we've got to build information to be able to answer that question.
But his question, I believe, was different in that he was talking about the sequencing relative to an MTC resolution, whereas this proposal is seeking a period of time to actually run a test. And Obviously, the answer is it would have been much better to have done this a long time ago.
I understand, but to have a significant test or reasonable testing of the outcome, you'd have to have it for a period of time. I don't know what those periods are, but it sounds like this is stretched out over a longer period of time. Maybe
Well,
good, may not be.
the issue is relative to the MTC resolution,
Right.
and that is an issue.
If you would select this as your preferred option with more information on the traffic impacts and understanding from Caltrans as to their requirement for local resolutions of support from Corte Madera and Larkspur and the willingness of those councils to give those local resolutions of support, then we would estimate how long it would take to do this.
But my real question is, does that jeopardize the funding that apparently we have in place?
It's hard to answer. It's hard to answer because we don't know all the steps that would need to be taken. But the most important aspect of the funding is for this group to get behind a recommendation, a single recommendation to the TAM board that they can adopt. And that then goes to MTC as a recommendation on how to spend the funds. We don't know what all the mitigation would be necessary to try this. And that's the first step is, studying the traffic and how would we make this work, and making sure again that the locals authorize this, because Caltrans will not close ramps probably. I'm looking at you, Dan, without the local jurisdiction saying, okay, go try it. So a lot of this is going to move right over to the two local
So
jurisdictions.
just to clarify, if we select this, and we're
Right.
ways from that,
Right.
hypothetically, if we select this, that's not going to result necessarily in the loss of the funding for improvements associated with it. Or if it proves not to be a viable solution, negate other possibilities.
If it takes 2 years of mitigation, you have to buy property and you have to do an EIR, then it complicates things. If it's something that we can develop a cost and schedule that is acceptable to MTC time-wise, then yes, they may accept it. But in all these proposals, we didn't get a lot of detail. There's engineering, traffic, environmental, and right-of-way impacts that would have to be understood. And we can develop that. That's going to take a little time. Is that 6 months or is it 5 years? That's the kind of stuff we've got to go back and let you know. If any of these interest you, we have to come back and tell you, here's how you get
to perhaps give you an opportunity to reassure us or assure us that closing of ramps wasn't going to exacerbate the problem on Tamalpais overcrossing. I'm real protective of Tamalpais overcrossing.
What I'm suggesting is, I believe this would lead us towards longer-term solutions. So in the same way that you want solutions for Tamalpais, this might point out what needs to be done in a way that works for the entire sub-region. So the whole point of this was simply to break a logjam and try and get some facts on the ground.
Okay, but having said that, that we've also been told by some of the engineers that with Madera being used, which is critical to our shopping center, that it precludes us from doing anything major with Tamalpais overcrossing.
This proposal doesn't do anything with Madera.
Right, but when you say to address future improvements, I'm only concerned that.
Well, this might lead us to understand what a modern traffic solution for this area would look like. Because this is not a currently modern solution.
Okay.
Diane?
Thank you.
Okay. In your submittal for the last option, option 3, you very astutely said that there's peak hour congestion that begins where Sir Francis Drake and 580 meet with the Richmond Bridge. And it has a cascading effect down Sir Francis Drake, oftentimes all the way to 101. I know, and
That's a
Bill,
hypothesis.
well, actually, that was acknowledged by one of our supervisors, and kind of was the impetus for TAM to send a letter about 2 months ago to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, asking them to look at low-cost ways to improve that entry onto the bridge right there. I'm just curious if we've heard anything back from MTC or what the status of that is.
We haven't heard anything back.
Okay, do we have any idea of when we might hear?
No, we'll look into it and report back to the group on that.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Alice, and then Dan, and then we'll go on to the next one.
You know, with my background as a behavioral scientist, of course I loved reading this. As a policymaker, it really gave me a headache. This is really an experiment that needs to be carefully designed.
Yes.
For example, when you close industrial, I'm betting all that traffic just goes to Tamalpais.
However, part of my hypothesis, unstated, is that a lot of that traffic is actually cut-through traffic. I know because I do it myself. Cut-through traffic that's trying to get around the congestion on 101 by getting to industrial and then getting and going to the bridge. So if those people never get off the highway, then there's a lot less traffic at Industrial Way that has to go to Tamalpais. So we don't have data on this.
That's right.
the problem.
And if you look at traffic operations, that would be one of the risks. Let me ask the staff something. So it seems to me, I mean, we've all agreed that this may or may not put the funding at risk, but in terms of a timeline, first we'd have to have the local jurisdictions, that'd be Corte Madera and Larkspur, agree to all these closures. In fact, first we'd have to have some way to design the closures so that they make some kind of sense in keeping traffic flowing, and then get the approval of the jurisdictions, right? Then we'd have to go through the process with Caltrans to safely close the ramps with this test, maybe even design the test with them. And then when all that is done, all we've done is come to a decision point. We still don't have a developed plan for the corridors. So that would be another step. Is that where we...
That's our understanding. This is a test.
So
this is only a test.
And that's clarification for me. Thank you.
Last comment?
Just very quickly, and this might apply to others proposing the K-rail separation.
Yes.
Public safety responders need to get to accidents on the freeway. And I would be looking for solutions that did not add to the response time. For example, if local first responders couldn't get to a segment of the freeway in this part, first responders might have to come from San Rafael. So I would just recognize that as a possible challenge to possibly this and others.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks.
It's great. So next we have Pan Simple with just Scott Stokes, and we'll go back to our 10-minute presentation followed by 5 minutes of discussion.
Pass these down. Push the button, push the button. Whoa! Boy, it's small. I wish you were all at the church the other day. You saw my article in the IJ on Friday. You are welcome to an open house at the Lutheran Church. We have a high definition projector. Awesome. Too bad we don't have that. I just handed out a little submittal form that wasn't in the packet. It says, if you want to build raised flyovers and graded ramps in the sky, consider providing a true 580 101 freeway interchange in San Rafael. Thank you, Thomas. And return East Francisco Boulevard to local traffic as originally intended. Boy, that would go a long way to help Corte Madera. Yes. The only reason I mention this right up in front is all the discussions I ever got into with the Marine Deserves Better and others always said, let's get this done freeway to freeway. It's ridiculous to be on East Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Personally, I want to introduce myself. Scott Stokes, or Lou Scott Stokes, really do. Graduate of Northwestern University, Industrial Engineering Systems Analysis. I worked as a Northwest Indiana transit planner, transit-oriented. I then worked for the Chicago Area Transit Study, a big modeling effort of the whole Bay Area, of the Chicagoland area. Worked on that, but then I got tired of lines. I wanted to really do something and learn transit. What did I do? I spent 6 years in the Chicago Transit Authority in supervisory positions, analysis positions, and I learned a lot about transit. Plain and simple, that, which of course you can't really see, is really transit-based program. What do you think, transit? Well, first of all, last Tuesday, the 4 counties got together and they had a transportation program that they wanted to study. First time they met in 10 years, except Marin County didn't meet in that last 10 years ago. So they were kind of new to the program. But one thing they said, they want to concentrate on 37. What does 37 do right now? Well, when that 37 traffic gets in on 101, what happens? Backs up all the way to the grade at the Civic Center, right? Well, wait until that opens up and the Sonoma Narrows open up and we've got real traffic. What's the solution to this traffic congestion? What is the solution? The solution is something you don't have now, and that is regional express bus service. What did Vallejo do with their money for the bridges? They built a beautiful transit system right next to the ferry. We have to do the same. We have to provide regional express buses so we carry the people and take the cars off the freeway. We've got a big problem. 37 101 from Sonoma is tough. So let's take my program, and I'll get to the transit component right away. First project, there are 12 projects. Each are defined by a form that was nicely designed, thank you. And it says all the positive or negative impacts, and it's worth reading. What I'm going to say in 10 minutes has nothing to do with anything. You got to read that details. First project is, okay, right there we add a second lane on the off-ramp for East Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. Same as the planned build, that I put that on the board so you can see what was proposed by CAM. Wow. My plan has no raised flyovers. It stays at ground level. That provides this, just like that plan, it provides, it provides an opportunity for traffic from 101 southbound to get on that on-ramp ramp. And there is, instead of we have the bottleneck right there, that's goes to one lane. Why? I don't know. It should go to 2 lanes. The engineering's been done. It's done on that plan, and so that's all it's done. And if you're on eastbound Sir Francis Drake and take that exit, you just stay in your lane on the right-hand side, and you get off at Pfeiffer. No changing of lanes. If you're westbound on Sir Francis Drake and take that same ramp right there, okay, you'll be on the left side, right? That lane on the left side, without changing lanes, goes continuously all the way over to Tamalpais. It is an auxiliary lane, a very important part of any good transportation. It adds a buffer for people getting on and off, and it adds capacity. We need capacity. I wish we had that into Central Centerville southbound. And there's barriers here, and then in the middle of those 2 lanes that stop the traffic on 101 after it crosses the creek to getting off at Pfeiffer. It's told to enter this off-ramp here to go to Pfeiffer. No problem, no problem. Right here is the key to this plan. What is this thing right here? This is an opportunity. If we don't grab it right now and set up a regional bus express bus mini transit center. So buses from Vallejo, Santa Rosa, Petaluma, all points north, can put people in a bus, express bus, get 20 cars off the road at once, that's minimal. It can come down and it comes off the freeway and enters this transit center, right? Of course, we're just from here to here, we only have off ramps. And express buses get off there. Waiting for them are shuttle buses that can load from Pfeiffer and turn on and enter the mini transit center. And anybody wanting to go southbound, one of the projects, part of this project, these are all individual components. There is an on-ramp from Warnham southbound. Oh my gosh. Keep in mind that Warnham is halfway between Sir Francis Drake and Tamalpais. It is the perfect place to focus on access. You are transferring from one side of the freeway to the other, and if you want to, let's say you're on the east side and you want to go south, like you got to cross under the freeway, you go to Warnham, you take a left. You do not have to go up and around and get back to Pfeiffer and get on. I don't care what you build, ramps or otherwise, any plan, you have to take that traffic off that circle. And the same thing applies here. There is another ramp. There is difficulties here. You have to mitigate them somehow. But there is now a northbound on-ramp from Warnham, right there without stopping. It's a yield on the turn and goes north and forms its own auxiliary lane. That auxiliary lane going over the top of Warnham is a fifth lane. Does it exist now? Does it exist now? The fifth lane there. Yes. We got one guy knows. Now that's going north. Do we have a fifth lane going south? To allow for this auxiliary lane, it starts right there and without moving at all, without changing lanes, goes all the way to Tamalpais. Do we have the capability at the Warnham overcrossing southbound? Okay. No, we don't. We need to build that lane, that extra lane over the top of Warnham. With that, we have a continuous auxiliary lane. Here, there could be a sixth lane, and when you get on at Madeira, instead of merging into the auxiliary lane, you have your own separate lane. You just stay in that lane that merges to the middle lane, and you can get on a new on-ramp there. That's only needed. This is only needed if they won't let you merge over to the auxiliary lane from that on-ramp. Beautiful. And of course, keep in mind that this bridge for the north-south Greenway, you'll notice there's some details and pilings in there. We should have an international design competition for that span. We can get $10 million worth of design engineering for a fraction of that. Plus, it's going to be fascinating to see what the world can come up with. Prize money, of course, for what you pay is unbelievable. And of course, the coup de grace, what's right there? What's right there? That's right. What's my project? Is there a project there? It's a no build. It's right there. Don't turn it down. Okay. Basically, that's it. Transit oriented. And what we need is new direction. I have watched this. This plan has existed for over 4 years. Do you think they responded? No. What we need is new leadership. New competent leadership. New leadership that speaks out new ideas and new input from the public that it's supposed to serve and is sensitive to the quality of life issues for all people in the North Bay area. And if we don't accommodate, thank you very much, if we don't accommodate express regional buses, and you can't accommodate it with big orange signs.
The time is up. You need
Okay.
to wrap up. Thank you.
Okay. You want to get up there? Okay, and by the way, anybody can sign up, just come and see me, and we'll give you all kinds of links and stuff emailed to you.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes.
Well, you're welcome.
So I'd like to mention that Mr. Stokes is correct. He has submitted this plan in the past to TAM. We have had our engineers sit down and go over that in detail a couple years ago. We prepared a matrix explaining to Mr. Stokes some of the challenges in the plan at that time. He heard a lot of those and has refined his design a little bit, so we'd like to acknowledge that and acknowledge some of the beneficial features that he does have. He does attempt to maintain the access to our local roadway system. Credit to him with the auxiliary lane, absolutely that's a positive element in this proposal. And we compliment him on the proposal for a multimodal element, including the mini transit center. Some of the challenges that we've observed is many of the features do not account for safety and design standards, so it needs to be developed further and accommodate elements in the highway design manual. We acknowledge a short weave distance between Warnham and the mini transit off-ramps and the Sir Francis Drake on-ramp. The existing weave does continue, so it does not resolve the weaving problem we have at that location. Mr. Stokes does have an on-ramp at Warnham Drive going in the southbound direction. What that does is that causes a weave between Warnham Drive and Madera Boulevard off-ramp. So that is another weave that's introduced into the corridor. Then in the northbound direction, we would acknowledge that his proposed on-ramp adds approximately 4 lanes in that area on Old Redwood Highway, likely extending the roadway out into the marsh in that area, permanently taking that wetland. So in conclusion, we don't feel like we've addressed the weeds with this proposal as indicated, and that the southbound weeds continue to exist with this proposal. So, with that, I'd like to stop.
So any questions or discussion from the working group?
Just a question, I don't, and I might have missed this, Mr. Stokes, you add a southbound on-ramp at Tamalpais from that can you speak to that, 3B?
Absolutely, real fast. You notice that's designated 3B, right?
Yeah.
3B, that's, if you read the accompanying sheets that we were made to fill out, which I very much liked, you know. It was a lot of, but it addressed that. That is only an option if Caltrans says that when you get on it southbound at Madeira, they will not allow you to merge into the auxiliary lane. That's not a general purpose lane, it's an auxiliary lane there. If they won't allow you to enter there, you will simply stay in that lane. It merges to the middle of the 3 lanes of that approach the light at Tamalpais. It's in the middle lane. You stay in the same lane you got onto that auxiliary lane, and then that 3B would come into play. If they allow you certainly to just to take, instead of, by the way, forcing you, even in some of the other plans, they're forcing you to merge into that means a force.
Okay.
Cut you off.
You got, I got, it addresses a need. I just wanted to understand that.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Gary, then I'll come to Diane.
I just have one question. My initial reaction was the weaving feature as well, and it seemed like not only didn't we eliminate the weaving, but we compounded the issue with 2 lanes, and therefore the weaving is even more of a challenge. I'd be interested, perhaps I'm not reading it correctly, but so I'd be interested in your reaction or your comments with regard to weaving.
Weaving on the southbound Sir Francis Drake on-ramp. Right. Well, right now, how many lanes do we have at the bottom of that ramp? 1. On the planned build, how many plans do they plan on having at the bottom of that ramp? 2. Same 2 lanes. So, and if you are westbound on East Sir Francis Drake, coming up and take that exit, right? You're in the left-hand lane, right? If you're on southbound, you don't have to do a thing. You can go all the way on that lane without changing lanes. I like the term changing lanes. All the way to Tamalpais if you want. Have all the time in the world to get off. And if you're eastbound on Sir Francis Drake, taking that ramp, you're in the right-hand lane there, right? Well, you just stay in that lane and you go right to 5. No leaving, no nothing. Two major, major components of both of those on-ramps. If you're not, and you want to go to 5 first, that's why you got off the freeway at the exit on the other side of the creek, you simply have to change lanes. Now, you can call it anything you want, but I provide a long distance for you just to move over into that lane. And women, and the big thing is, big thing is that if the lights are properly coordinated, those people entering that Y from east and west Sir Francis Drake won't see cars from the other ramp because it's properly timed. I, for one, as it turns out, when you stop at the bottom of that off-bound ramp for East Francisco, and then get right back on the ramp, which you all know about, and when I get up there where the big Y is, are there any cars meeting me there? No. Good timing of the lights in that respect. But with a little adjustment, you won't see those cars, and you will simply be addressed with an open lane to either your left or right to turn into game over.
Okay. Bill, forgive me, this is a question for you. In the supplemental packet, you or the consultants declare that the pedestrian overcrossing would need to be replaced due to the wider facility. I presume you mean the widening of 101 to accommodate one extra lane. I've been out there. There appears to be plenty of room to add one more lane. Why do you feel the need to then eliminate the pedestrian overcrossing when it appears there's plenty of room?
Well, that's an initial assessment, obviously without more detail, but we feel that when we start including all of the design features that we need, such as shoulders, the discussion has been brought up about the K-rail. When you start a K-rail, you have to begin to notify the drivers that there's an obstacle in front of them. So we call it a gore, and you have to develop that transition so people know that they're going to be turning one way or the other and not obviously run into that obstacle. That takes distance to develop. So our interpretation of this proposal is that it's very close to touching the pedestrian overcrossing. Maybe we shouldn't have been so definitive in saying that, but it is a challenge.
Okay, what if you use pylons like we have in the northbound direction near industrial instead of a K-rail?
Well, the pylons are developed in the direction of travel. When you're putting the K-rail, you're driving into the K-rail. And so you need to safely...
I'm not driving into the K-rail. I mean, obviously where you have the lanes diverge, you probably start with a solid lane and then you eventually, get to something like those little plastic pylons. Is that not practical?
Well, it's like the sort of transitions that you currently see out in the highway, going northbound in the off-ramp. You have the transition period where you're starting direct traffic in one way or the other. Mm-hmm. It just takes distance to develop. And I'm not the highway expert on the standards, but that is basically a common feature that we have with all the K-rails, that we're just starting in the middle of two lanes, is you need to develop that diversion.
I hope I have this right. So will the new Warnham on-ramp mean that you have to close, or at least consider closing, the Madera off-ramp?
The proposal as is not closing the Madera off-ramp. So you have an on-ramp at Warnham, then you're going to have a short weave, and then you're going to have an off-ramp at Madera.
So that off-ramp treatment looks somewhat viable? I mean, can it be included as part of another proposal?
Well, it's when we looked at this feature in the past, because we had an on and off ramp at Warnham on the west side.
You're going to speak up.
Then we understood that the on ramp from Warnham would necessitate the closure of the off-ramp to Madeira because of conflict. That's the conclusion that we reached before. So we would revisit the issue with Caltrans. There's a good chance the same conclusion will be drawn, that it would necessitate the closure of the Madeira off-ramp.
So this would be another study.
We would need to, we have quite a bit of info because that was studied in the past, but yes, we would need to evaluate that further.
Okay, I'd like to recommend we keep moving. If that's okay with everybody? All right, thank you so much, Mr. Stokes. And your campaigner over there. Okay, Mr. Harrison, if we could have you come up, please. And there's an extra seat up here if somebody would like to sit down. And one more back there. And I did receive a note from someone about limiting the work group, but we really need the work group to be able to ask questions when there's an opportunity. So I appreciate your patience on that.
Let me start. Did everybody get my little extra handout that I had on the table today? Let me put a few of them up there for you.
No.
Do you want me to pass those out for you?
Yes, please.
I'll do that.
Good afternoon, evening, wherever we are. My name is Bob Harrison. I've been working in transportation planning in Marin County for, 35, 40 years. And in fact, I should mention I am still under contract with the city of Larkspur, but nothing I say today has anything official with regard to the city of Larkspur. This is strictly Bob Harrison. I'd like to start out by saying a couple of things. I believe we've got to start thinking about what are the fundamental priorities for this project. I see budget constraints as one of the big ones, and that's why I divided my proposal into a phase 1 and a phase 2. Now, as I understand it, there's around $47 million available in the short run, so I made phase 1 fit to $47 million. Now, obviously, you cannot resolve or even begin to resolve all the problems out there for $47 million. So we have a phase 2, which hopefully gets to the rest of the story. But it does indeed, I want to make sure that everybody understands, I do attempt to do what we can. Now, I also want to say we don't solve anything. I mean, you cannot solve the Highway 101 problem that would, in any fashion, would be acceptable to the citizens of Marin County. Engineers can do it. We can add enough lanes to get those people moving. But the people of Marin would never accept it, so there's no sense talking about it. What we are going to do is try to deal with the bottlenecks. Now, the study that's been done to date identifies those bottlenecks. In fact, David Chummer gave credit to myself. It wasn't me. It was the consultants for the TAM study. They came up with a bottleneck. And so this scheme that I have attempts to deal with those particular bottlenecks and does indeed do as much as you can to manage the weaving and the merging, and will improve capacity a little bit. It will not solve the problem. I think we have to keep that in mind. The other thing I want to say as a fundamental priority is my plan, particularly phase 1, is focused on the non-automotive. Because we can't solve the problem by just building more lanes, maybe we can do a little bit by reducing the number of people that want to drive. And if we're going to do that, we have to make really significant commitments to do the non-automotive project. And that is where my plan starts. Clearly, the final thing it has to be is acceptable to the public, so there are no braided ramps and all of that kind of stuff in my plan. So my priorities are the bikeway, number 1, extend the Greenway, extend the SMART train. Look out, look out. Look for local street congestion, solve the northbound, or at least not, I'm going to use the word solve by mistake several times tonight. We aren't going to solve any, resolve, deal with the northbound congestion on 101, and then the southbound. Now I go northbound first, because I think everybody knows there's more congestion northbound, and even the statistics developed over the last several years show more accidents, at least a higher accident rate northbound. So northbound becomes the top priority. So now in terms of the projects themselves, my main project, and that unfortunately is virtually impossible to read, I hope that some of you can look at it on your handout, is a single bridge, northbound, over Corte Madera Creek and Sir Francis Drake to take the northbound ramp from Redwood Highway to the freeway. In other words, we're just going to eliminate that northbound bottleneck by bypassing it with a new ramp. But on that bridge, we're also going to have the bicycle greenway extended south and the potential for the SMART train to be extended south. Now, moving the SMART train, or putting the SMART train on there, allowing that roadbed, means you can move the SMART train from where it's now being looked at, up behind the movie house at Larkspur Landing, and kind of a remote location, down to East Sir Francis Drake. So you put the SMART station at East Sir Francis Drake, you can meet the local buses. You can build bus stops with shelters. You can make a major transit center at that location. You're not just adding the potential for a SMART extension, but you're also putting in that transit connection. So we've got the multi-use bridge. I'm calling it design-driven, meaning it's more than just a slab up on pier. Hopefully we get something serious. It becomes an architectural feature of Marin County. Maybe even the entrance to Marin County from the East Bay is remembered because of this bridge. Who knows? We might really do something good there. Three modes on the bridge. And the one other thing the bridge does, the single bridge, it avoids what was spoken to me earlier tonight, bridge clutter. If we don't have one bridge, we'll have 3 bridges lined up, boom, 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 assuming we extend SMART someday. Now, why would we want to plan to have 3 bridges on East Sir Francis Drake within 100 feet of one another? Clearly, a better design of some kind, maybe not what I've got, but something like that, get rid of that 3 bridges. Go with the single bridge. We put a lot of money in bicycle projects. In my phase 1, we built the path all the way from Larkspur Landing to the Redwood Highway. In my second phase, grade separated over to Sandra Marker Trail. We had street capacity in phase 1. The main issue that I talked about is an eastbound lane on Sir Francis Drake from the Berryway Alicio intersection, that's the first one west of the highway, over to the ramps. Putting that 3rd lane in there will make that intersection work far better than it does today and greatly improve the operation of the local street. Now, I'm calling phase 2 because we can't afford to do it under $47 million. We would deal with the southbound issues on Highway 101. I know the southbound feels bad. When you come on that ramp, it just doesn't feel good. But the numbers aren't there. The safety statistics don't show that it's a terribly unsafe situation. People apparently deal with it. So maybe we don't have to do anything right away. In any event, what I do propose is similar to other proposals, which is a collector road, what we call a collector road system. And Dan's already raised the issue of the K-rail. The reason you do the K-rail is so you can do a minimal width 2-lane collector. With a minimal width, and this doesn't meet standards, clearly it doesn't meet standards, you can squeeze it in and keep that pedestrian overcrossing in place. But you can do it, it does fit, we've got measurements and so forth, it shows it can be done. So we can put a collector road in there. Now what that does is it eliminates the weaving from the freeway on to Pfeiffer. The people exit north of the creek to get to the Pfeiffer off-ramp. And they join the Sir Francis Drake on-ramp to get to that Pfeiffer off-ramp. Any weaving then is done on a local street at slower speed, and in fact, I believe you can get 1,000 feet between the noses of those 2 ramps, which is actually the standard for the local street weaving situation. So you eliminate the weaving from the freeway, which has been identified as the key southbound congestion point. In addition, of course, as I mentioned, you finish the Sandra Marker, the connection to the Sandra Marker Trail, the grade separated, and now we've got the SMART train. The train now, we have a bridge across the creek in phase 1. We've also got the right-of-way going all the way down to Paradise Drive. Let's build the SMART train. Let's get it down, at least down to the village, and have a serious station stop at the village shopping center. Corte Madera should become part of the SMART system. Why not? And that could be part of phase 2 as well. The one other thing I do mention in my plan is the approach to the Richmond Bridge. I suggest that we just go and get a 3-lane approach, stop fooling around. I don't think it can be squeezed, although there is a little bit of space out there. My guess is the structure over Main Street at San Quentin does have to be rebuilt to put the 3rd lane in. But let's get the 3rd lane in there, because we don't want that thing to back up like someone was describing earlier, all the way back to 101. So, and then if Caltrans can't, let them restripe the whole bridge for 3 lanes eastbound. It was there, I don't know, 20 years ago. it was striped for 3 lanes. Then we put the pipe on it, right? So we cut it down to 2 lanes. What year was that? Anybody know? 1985? It shows how long I've been here. What year was it?
Round of 72.
72. That shows how long I've been around. Okay, anyway, it was 3 lanes once. It could be 3 lanes again. Send the 3 lanes all the way to Richmond. But if not, you may not even have to do that, because if you got a lot of space for a long, long merging section, that could be possibly the way to do it. But in any event, that's part of the scheme for the phase 2. Also fix the approach to the Richmond Bridge. Now, I know I'm just about out of time. 1 minute. I got 1 minute. See that? How fast can I talk, huh? Basically, here's what I'd like to say. In my phase 1, I'm claiming it can be done for 47 minutes. That's obviously a very rough number. I did take some unit costs off of the bridge and off of the distance on the ramps and stuff. So they're in the right ballpark. But I know we got right-of-way issues. We got utility issues. Got all kinds of issues out there. It's in the right ballpark. What I want to say is, of that money, almost half of that money, is my proposal, is for non-automotive. It's for the bicycle system, the pedestrian facilities, and the smart bridge over the creek. If we're going to make a serious effort to actually get people to not take their cars, and we really want to commit to it, that's the way we got to start thinking. Maybe as much as half the money goes to non-automotive concepts. We still deal with the northbound 101, we get rid of that congestion point, but we put in some serious transit, bicycle, pedestrian facilities. I have any questions? Congratulate Bill and the staff. What they're trying to do here is they've got these ridiculous concepts coming from all over the place. They're only planning things, and they're trying to actually put some serious analysis on it, and it's not easy. I appreciate their effort.
Bill?
Okay, the proposal from Mr. Harrison was rather complicated. It was rather lengthy. There was limited graphics. He did provide a more clear graphic today. So we had to interpret a fair amount of his features based on the written description. So we're not sure if we accurately picked all of the elements. But I'd like to start with his phase 1, the bridge crossing. We do commend him. The new bridge crossing Porter Creek does provide for the north-south Greenway route. We believe that it eliminates the weave issue northbound on US 101. We're assuming that he's closing industrial on-ramps with that proposal.
No, it'll be a local connection. They can still get on an industrial, but you couldn't get on the freeway.
You have to go across the bridge.
Then I would interpret that to eliminate the weave issue.
Yeah, no, 1,000 cars are out of that.
As he acknowledged, that his design does not meet standards, so we would need to account for freeway safety, emergency vehicle access, elements such as that. The proposal in the northbound direction does have rather significant residential and commercial right-of-way impacts. It takes buildings, full properties.
No buildings. It does take property, no doubt.
And we feel that there will be increased traffic on Old Redwood Highway from Industrial Avenue to the north end.
That's for
sure.
sure.
Must be addressed. Speaking to his phase 2A, that creates this off-ramp back near Sir Francis Drake Boulevard off-ramp north of Porter Creek, creating a collector road, distributor road. We do acknowledge that the auxiliary lane going southbound would be a beneficial feature. In his proposal, he does leave the POC in place, but acknowledges that our design standards are not met. Some of the challenges that we have observed were that the new structure over Corte Madera Creek on Highway 101 itself and the widening of Corte Madera Creek southbound Sir Francis Drake would cause additional visual impacts and have environmental impacts that we need to consider. We applaud him on phase 2B, which he is upgrading the bicycle pedestrian system by creating a new pedestrian overcrossing. So in summary, with the challenges for 2B, they're very similar to 2A, and that the environmental conditions, including the construction of the collector distributor road system, would absolutely have to be evaluated to continue access of the vehicles through the construction zone. So with that,
Okay.
for questions.
Thank you. Questions for either Mr. Harrison or Bill? Carla, go ahead.
Okay, I have a question for Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison, on your proposed construction of the new bridge for the pedestrian bicycle overcrossing, do you have any suggestions, recommendations, strategies that you might propose that would help to alleviate environmental concerns that might be resulting in challenges?
I don't claim to be an environmental expert, so I don't know that we can. I think that the key would be to bring in the experts. We probably would have to do some major remittance work elsewhere. I mean, there's no doubt that we would be going over some bay mud and some wetlands, but not that much. However, whatever there is, we have to mitigate it. And so I don't have anything specific. I'm thinking in terms of a high level, not high, upper, a quality level structure, and so that the architectural feature would be a major issue, but we still have the environmental to deal with. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, thank you.
Alice?
So this is either for Bill or Mr. Harrison. So this new collector distributor road, where does the traffic exit to access it?
Well, there's I have two concepts. One is we use the existing ramp system initially, and then the substandard collector over here. But for it to meet full Caltrans standards, I believe we'd have to leave the freeway north of the bridge at this point and run a parallel, effectively another bridge structure, the width of the collector lane. Calling it a collector on the sense that it is not an auxiliary lane. It in fact is a lane that uses, it provides for on and off movements throughout the length of the roadway. Was that your question? I think it was.
Well, that was my question, and I'm sure that was the answer. I don't quite get it yet. Thank you.
Okay, Brad, and then I'll come over here.
I just wanted to ask about one of the for lack of a better word, criticisms on phase 1 that's on the list here. It says likely additional traffic at Tamalpais interchange must be addressed. I'm wondering how that issue is raised.
Well, again, we interpreted some of his.
Well, that was based on a previous.
Well, it was interpreting what's going on south of this picture, and so we read the wording of this proposal and felt like that would possibly impact Tamalpais.
I think I'd actually go the other way. I would say if anything, it improves the access to 101 North. So therefore, if anything, we might be reducing some of the 101 North from Tamalpais and having them choose to come up here.
It had to do with the industrial on-ramps, and our assumption was they would close.
Oh, no.
You mentioned now,
They
clarifying,
would remain open for the,
it was one of our questions. We
Right.
didn't have a
I'm
chance
sorry.
to.
Yeah, no, no, you guys are doing a great job considering what you got to work with. I'm absolutely impressed.
If that's the case, the industrial on-ramps would close, then traffic would end up going back to Tamalpais to get on.
Francis Drake, right.
But since there's a bridge going over under this proposal, it wouldn't have that same effect. Is that correct?
Well, I think one of our follow-up questions would be where you put the local access bridge. You've got this freeway bridge. I think we'd have to take a look at how these work.
My
together.
assumption is local access uses the existing structure.
Okay.
And at industrial, you get on just like you do now, but you
Okay.
don't have a very high volume. Number one, it's a much lower volume than what's getting on there now, because it's almost, 1,000 an hour or something like that, making that left turn to get on at industrial, and I'm sure it'll be way less than half of that. And that they would use the local structure to reach Drake either west or eastbound, but they would not be going to 101.
Okay, I had a question about the southbound collector road. I'm curious if you could describe the function of the collector road as opposed to maybe an auxiliary lane, how that works.
Well, the collector road system, the concept is that you have ons and offs. The auxiliary lane is between ramps, typically.
Okay.
And in fact, my proposal includes one I think most everyone has, which is the auxiliary lane from Piper down to Madera, over Warrenham. And in fact, the one thing I think should be mentioned here, that's 1,500 feet between Warrenham and Madera, which is quite a good distance for merging. And that, it would also be a downhill merge, which makes a big difference. Right now, as you know, you merge on the uphill, and people tend to be a little slow getting up into that merge system. So it compounds the fact that you have the Sir Francis Drake lead issue with a slow merge from Piper. So
Okay.
that's the idea. We would merge further down.
Got it. But the other thing I noticed is if you look at one of the Google Map views of this area, you can see that there are bent caps, or the support structures for the freeway over Corte Madera Creek that stick out on the south side, and they just barely stick out on the north side. So I'm kind of curious, you know, in terms of being able to utilize the infrastructure we have in place, what is involved in kind of shifting freeway lanes or something in order to accommodate one more lane if we wanted to do that on the southbound side?
Structural engineer?
I would say that you're correct, your observation is correct. The bends do not stick out on the highway structure nearly enough to add a full lane. So you would be looking at adding columns and extending those girder beams.
Well, they do stick out on the east side though. So, but I don't know how easy it is to shift an entire freeway.
If I had to guess, I would say this Bill's absolutely right. On the
Okay.
the west side, there is simply not enough to make use of it. It would be a new bridge.
Got it.
It would be a new one-lane bridge.
Okay. Phase 2, thanks.
Okay, should we keep going? Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Harrison. Okay, we have two more, and the next one is Marin Deserves Better. Yeah.
Can the lights be turned off so that the screen shows up better?
I was told that we had the lights off or down.
We have half of it. It started at that one.
There we go.
Thank you.
Sure. Would you like to introduce yourself, sir?
Yes, my name is Steve Cardellini. I'm here to speak for Marin Deserves Better.
Great.
Actually, I have my own. I'll give you a chance to read these. We're cutting this off.
I don't think it's the podium. There's some issue. I'm not sure what.
Okay, well, it looks readable enough. Let's move on. Okay, good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. Marin Deserves Better is a group of about 20 local citizens. We come from various communities in the area and from many different walks of life. We were brought together by the build plan. We share the opinion that this plan's visual impact and its minimal regard for bicycle and foot traffic make it unacceptable for this area. So we are here today to present lower cost solutions to traffic congestion and alternative travel conductivity that would have much less effect on the look and feel of our communities. The MDP plan would add capacity to 101 while eliminating freeway weaving. It would separate auto, head, bike, and transit for safer, more fluid traffic flow. And it is superior to TAM's proposal per TAM's performance evaluation criteria. Okay, now we'll show you how. Okay, we're going to look at the traffic flows now, starting with southbound traffic. The primary benefit of our plan in this area is that it completely separates the local traffic from the freeway traffic, with minimal merges, no flyover lanes, and no need to remove the pedestrian overpass. We start with the traffic heading to Pfeiffer Avenue, the Lucky Drive exit. Okay, traffic coming from 101 South would no longer go through the awkward weave to get to the exit. They would use the exit to Sir Francis Drake East, taking a new right-hand lane down to Sir Francis Drake. Traffic lights would allow them to make a right turn, and then an immediate left turn onto the overcrossing. They would proceed over the creek and into a new right-hand lane that exits at Pfeiffer, all the time separated from the freeway-bound traffic by rubber barrier posts. Traffic on Sir Francis Drake West would alternately use that same route to Pfeiffer Avenue. Traffic on Sir Francis Drake East would use the existing on-ramp, which would become the new right-hand lane headed to Pfeiffer. Now we'll look at the southbound freeway traffic. You can see here the dotted yellow line showing the paths of the local traffic, all on the right side. Now we will bring both directions of Sir Francis Drake traffic over the creek, each in its own lane, and both on the left side of the barrier. And here's how we do that. Traffic on Sir Francis Drake West would use the existing on-ramp to the overcross, as shown there by the green arrow. Traffic on Sir Francis Drake East would use the new loop approach road to a new on-ramp and a new left lane of the overcrossing. These two lanes both cross the creek and join 101 South. One of them becomes a new auxiliary lane that runs all the way to Madera Boulevard, increasing the freeway capacity. And all of the lanes that cross the creek would sit on the existing structure. And we'll get into that later, I'm sure. The short Pfeiffer on-ramp would be lengthened and join the auxiliary lane. Now we have a chart here. This chart shows you the reduction in merging for all four traffic flows from Sir Francis Drake. As you can see, merging for the freeway traffic is reduced from 4 merges to 1 merge. That would be these two groups of traffic here. And for the local traffic, they would go from 3 merges. The one down below here is also a 3. And the one down here is also a 1. So what we've done is we've gotten everybody to where they want to go with 1 merge. That's probably the thing we're the most proud of in this whole thing. Okay, now we move over to the northbound traffic. So the 2 on-ramps from Tamalpais, this one and this one, would feed into a new auxiliary lane that would extend north for the length of the corridor. So they don't merge into the 4th lane the way they do now. At the Industrial Way on-ramp, traffic that's headed for 101 North would not descend to Sir Francis Drake and wait at the light as it does now.
And there was a translation problem with the PowerPoint, so can you pick up?
Okay, yeah. I think everybody knows what happens. You come down here, you get off the freeway, you wait here, and then you take this ramp up. Okay. What they would do is they would follow that. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Here we go. Okay, we've got it. So this is what happens now.
This is very cool.
Everybody waits, and eventually the light changes, and they all take off.
Nice job.
Okay. Instead, they would take a new land bridge over Sir Francis Drake to 101, allowing traffic to flow more freely on Sir Francis Drake. And this was misinterpreted in the review in that it says this would require a new bridge over the creek. However, it actually starts north of the creek on dry ground.
Excuse me, Mr. Carney, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. All right, that's it for traffic flows. Now I'd like to introduce David McPherson, who's going to discuss the integrated pedestrian, bicycle, and transit aspects of our plan.
So on the 24th, the Marin Deserves Better group will be presenting 20 pages of the bicycle pedestrian improvements that we are suggesting. So let me just hit on two of the key elements that we believe are super important. The whole project area is only 2 miles by 3 miles, mostly flat, includes 7 shopping centers and commercial districts, 8 schools, 2 theaters, and a Larkspur ferry. This is a bicyclist pedestrian dream, but for north-south connectivity and east-west connectivity. So the two central elements would be the completion of the Central Marin Ferry Connector and the north-south Greenway, which I think shows this shows the existing pedestrian crossing. These are improvements to existing streets, which are part of the whole connectivity. And the next slide should probably show the north-south Greenway from Warnham, crossing Corte Madera Creek and East End, St. Francis Boulevard, San Francisco Boulevard. This is an essential part of the east-west connectivity, and that's the multi-use path, being able to dip below Tamil Vista at the DMV. It is not, one misconception is that we have a completely underground tunnel. That's not what is considered. This is a short 60-foot dip below Tamil Vista, which allows all bicycles and pedestrians to avoid that intersection and the conflict, crossing underneath Warnham at grade, albeit Warnham will be widened underneath the freeway under the plan build and our plan, and then dipping below Redwood Boulevard and connecting to the north-south Greenway. I think we have one illustration that shows, this is for transit stops, but I think we have one slide that also shows an existing underpass in Davis, and these exist all over.
David, I need 30 seconds.
Okay. Sorry.
Thank you. When you consider our proposal and compare it to the existing conditions, you'll see that our plan contains numerous substantial improvements to the flow and safety of traffic, bicycles, and pedestrians, and might save about $50 million or so. We think these benefits warrant some design flexibility given the constraints of the project area. We would be very pleased to have an opportunity to work with TAM and Caltrans and to help find the very best possible solution.
Thank you so much.
Some of the design features that we picked up that were challenging was that some of the proposals do not include elements that address the safety and design features that we've mentioned in a number of the other proposals. The proposed 4-lane bridge crossing Corte Madera Creek in the southbound direction will tax the structure that we have in place today. So reconstruction of that southbound on-ramp is considered likely. The new eastbound loop ramp assumes a curve radius that would need to be larger, and that may result in an impact to the wetlands in the area. The southbound off-ramp to serve Francis Drake and widening US 101 with additional storage. So let me repeat that again. So the proposed direction of Pfeiffer-bound traffic to exit the freeway at Sir Francis Drake will require additional storage, a deceleration lane, and/or a possible auxiliary lane leading north of the off-ramp at Sir Francis Drake, and will absolutely need to be assessed further. The barrier that you show on westbound Sir Francis Drake connector going southbound will possibly cause driver confusion. We need to evaluate that further. Shoulders will be necessary with that, those narrow lanes to accommodate emergency vehicle access. Additional signage will be required in advance. I believe the proposal proposal acknowledges that at the Sir Francis Drake intersection to accommodate these movements. And then to accommodate the new US 11 connector in the northbound direction, so that would be the land bridge that you referred to. First assessment, we looked at the super elevation and the horizontal curve, and in consultation with our discussion with Caltrans, we feel that that connector would be difficult to just add on to the structure, and reconstructing that entire northbound off-ramp may be likely. I'll acknowledge that the southbound 101 on-ramp between Pfeiffer and Madera off-ramp still exists. That was the summary of the option 1. The option 2 beneficial features are similar to the ones that I mentioned in option 1. We do acknowledge that that is a little different, and that you have now a weave on the east Sir Francis Drake connector over the creek to the Pfeiffer southbound off-ramp. So we feel that weave on a horizontal vertical curve will be challenging. Again, the concept redirects Lucky Pfeiffer southbound traffic to Sir Francis Drake Boulevard off-ramp. We do think that widening the off-ramp to Sir Francis Drake, the additional storage, as I mentioned, the deceleration lane, and potential auxiliary lanes need to be assessed. We understood this proposal was coming forward earlier. We have asked the TAM board to allow us to do some traffic studies to further look at that particular movement in Sir Francis Drake, and we'll be prepared to respond to that at the June 24th meeting. So further traffic analysis is needed.
Okay. Members open for questions and discussion. I think Gary's had his hand up already, and I'll come to you, Alice.
I did have my hand up, but I think you perhaps answered my question. But first, the graphics were great. My hat's off to you guys for putting this together. My question was going to be, if it hasn't been answered, maybe you can. That is, the weaving aspect seems to be still in place, but I wanted to make sure that I didn't misunderstand what
I'm sorry, are you speaking to me or him?
I'm not sure either one, whoever can answer.
There is some weaving in option 2, which is why it's option 2. But with the loop option, there is no weaving.
So if I'm going from San Rafael, let's say south,
Yes.
don't I have to?
No, sir. You get off at the exit for Sir Francis Drake East. You stay in a new right-hand lane. You go down to Sir Francis Drake, and you do that little right jog and then left entrance onto the overcrossing.
That's assuming, of course, that I recognize that's the path.
Yes, well, the signs will clearly mark it that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Okay, Alice?
You mentioned that there was a misunderstanding by staff about the land bridge. What was the misunderstanding, and what is the
Well, it
clarification?
says in here that it might require building a new bridge over the creek, but the reason we thought this was a good option is that it doesn't start until that existing lane has already cleared the creek. I've been under there several times, and it's mostly on dry ground. At very high tides, there might be a little bit of wetland there. But for the most part, they would be working on dry ground. They would not be crossing the creek.
Thank you. Does that add anything to the comments that you make about the proposal?
No, as I stated, that we understand their proposal to create a land bridge, and I understand it's not over Port Madera Creek, but we feel when you start exploring that design further, that there are impacts to the existing structure, and that may need to be replaced in its entirety.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you. I just want to make sure on the loop that it was kind of a unique concept, and I think that the imagination needs to be applauded. But the critique says that it needs to be a larger loop.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you've assessed the consequences of that.
Actually, I assessed the drivability of the loop as is. Once I had a scale map and I could measure that the circle inside that lane, the tightest lane, is 150 feet. So I went to the cinema theater in their parking lot, and I put 2 posts 150 feet apart, and I drove that circle. It seemed pretty drivable, so then I started looking for comparable circles. And I found one in San Rafael, the on-ramp that goes from West Francisco Boulevard to 101 South. It wasn't easy to measure because the diameter goes across a fenced parking lot, but I paced off 100 feet in the parking lot and estimated 10 feet to the approach and 40 feet to the freeway line, 150 feet. Then I went to Petaluma Boulevard, where they now have a traffic circle, just to see what that was like, and I measured the circle inside of that is 101 feet. So we're 50% larger than that is. So at that point, we concluded that it was easily drivable and that we didn't want to infringe anymore on the wetlands, so we drew it the way we did.
So if I could just follow up. I'm not a traffic engineer, so I don't know if there are standards or requirements
I'm not
and so
either.
forth. So my question is, are there standards that might result in a larger radius necessary, in which case it would infringe upon wetlands?
Our assessment initially is that it needs to be a larger loop. We would need to look at that further.
Thank you.
Okay, Diane?
I just wanted to point out something about the concept for a land bridge northbound. Back in, I believe it was late 2007, 2008, there were, at the end of the process where we had taken all these ideas and whittled it down, we came up with 2 options. It was option D and option E. It was option E that was chosen and is incorporated in the TAM Build project. Bill, you actually stated in a Corte Madera Town Council meeting that the technical project team chose option E because it better fit with the southbound design, which was called option C. But from everything that I could read, option D was not discounted because of any particular issue having to do with construction over there by Sir Francis Drake. So can you speak, I know it was a long time ago, but do you recall what some of the thinking was about option D and the concept for that connector over Sir Francis Drake to 101?
Before he answers, can you clarify, is it because the option D and the parallel?
They're similar.
It's similar, okay.
They're similar. What it does is it eliminates the need to drop down to the stoplight.
Okay, just so, I thought that was our.
Thank you.
As I recall, option D, which was one of the 2 options that we were carrying forward, that particular option took traffic in the northbound direction and took it over Corte Madera Creek with a new structure, entirely new structure, to the east of the existing structures, and then came in and tied into the northbound on-ramp to 101. As we assessed those conditions, the traffic information was favorable to D by all means. Not by much, but they were both positive. But we started looking at the environmental impacts and the visual impacts. And so in consultation with our local agencies, we then screened out option D for further consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Question, thank you very much. It was a great presentation, a lot of good work. I had a question about with regards to the loop, questions that Gary was asking. It's partly about the size of the diameter and what are the constraints of the property there, of what's there, not wanting to infringe more on the wetlands, but it's something that could be looked at. But it's also the size dictates how quickly the cars move around the loop. So I would assume that if we were going to look at anything further, it's about how that functions. We can all drive in a circle, but we need the traffic to flow in a. So, and is there room there, at first blush, to want to assess that loop in a more highly critical engineering way to see if it's the size works as it is, to test the traffic, and then also, if it's not, if it's too small and too constraining, to look at, to see what would have to happen to enlarge it, to make it feasible.
As you noted, that is a high-volume on-ramp, and so it does need to be designed to accommodate a high volume of traffic, or there will be negative impacts to Sir Francis Street. So again, that's just a design feature that we really need to understand better and consult with Caltrans.
All right, and then the other concern I've had on a lot of these projects, and the land bridge question gets to it, is, and you've talked about it a little bit, Bill, whenever we look at adding like the extra lane southbound using the bed caps, they're sticking out. Maybe the room is there, but is the structure designed to carry, how much more weight is going to be there? I'm thinking about seismic things, and the structural, the engineering that was put into it was designed to accommodate a certain amount of traffic. So I'm thinking that if we give you direction to look at anything, that's one of the, any of these things that demand putting more traffic or expanding, adding lanes, that's one of the things you're going to be looking at.
Can I just say one thing quickly about the loop? In response to
Yeah, go ahead, and then I'll come to the mayor, and then we'll move.
The reason that I went to the parking lot was to see how quickly I could drive that. And I was able to drive it somewhere between 20 and 25 miles an hour. So after that, since then, that was probably 2 months ago. Every time I've crossed over the overpass now, I've checked my speedometer to see what speed I'm going when I'm merging with the other traffic. It's almost always 20 miles an hour or slower.
I have a question for Dan, our Caltrans guy. And this is probably going to, a bit of projection on my part because of my limited capacity to handle complexity, especially at interchange choices. But I observe people on Sir Francis Drake at peak periods going east and westbound often don't start out where they should start out to end up where they want to go. And they end up having to move over in front of other people and cutting other people off, and this all while bad behavior, texting, and all the kinds of stuff going on. And then especially eastbound Sir Francis Drake trying to go particularly northbound on 101. I mean, there's a lot of bad behavior that goes on there where people don't start soon enough before the light at what's the first surface road west of the interchange? Alicia, right. They don't start out soon enough before Alicia to get over to the left lane. And with the loop, for example, you're adding another choice in there where people are going to be jockeying and cutting other people off to move in there. I myself would want to go home and get on my bicycle. and also northbound 101, if I recall, option D, as previously studied, took that additional lane and swung it to the outside to get across East Sir Francis Drake, as opposed to going through the middle, where now is a post and the signage. And I just wondered, Dan, in adding complexity at these already complex interchanges, when you're adding these choices, does that present, from your experience, added safety and hazard issues? I mean, I myself, I don't want to rely on my own perceptions here, but for me, those choices, I would, between being distracted and other people trying to get in front of me and move over to where they hadn't started, and they want to get over to where they want to go, do you find that adds safety issues?
Well, any improvement is an opportunity to help with the safety and mobility. So, particularly in this scenario, I think some of the other scenarios, to have an opportunity to provide a movement that has not just only good signing and good striping. And when we talk about the loop, we have a grade issue there, and loops are evaluated on the highway design manual status, the tractor trailers, the larger vehicles, how they can accommodate the grade, climbing the ramp, as well as being able to have the width and have a good operational speed so we're not all stuck behind that truck. So that's why the loop needs to be further evaluated. Now that slowdown or hopefully good operational speed can help the movement.
What about the left turn aspect of the,
Well, any improvement to that interchange, however small or large, needs to look at all those movements and whether there's enough width at the signals to get traffic moving faster. So that's what the opportunity. I'm looking forward to seeing more details as we move forward on how we can improve the signal operations, the signing, the striping, the widths, the geometrics, and then also on the creek crossing, the 4 lanes. I'm nervous, and I think the project team noticed that as well, as whether that structure needs to be replaced to accommodate seismic retrofit, seismic replacement issues, because we want to be sure in the end for this option that it considers the width needed so that movement across the creek doesn't impact the interchange either. So the whole package.
but as long as the standards are met, you're not concerned about adding complexity to the number of choices involved within the interchange itself?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, please don't text and drive. I mentioned that CHP and I would like to.
Well, there's a big gap between that and action.
But the more we can do to inform the drivers as they approach the interchange and as they're moving through the interchange, into the signing, signal striping, and better geometrics, I think it's going to really help you operate safety.
Well, I guess I'll just have to choose my bike then.
Okay, thank you so much. We need to move on. We have one more, and we appreciate everyone's patience and great. You must be Mr. Bracken, and we have a 10-minute time frame for the presentation, and also warning you around 3 minutes, if that's all right, sir.
Lincoln could do Gettysburg Address in 2 minutes. I should be able to do this in 10.
Great.
I'm David Bracken, Town Manager and Town Engineer for Port of Madera. I'd like to thank the Chair and the working group members for having me here. And I'll just start by saying, if we could, are you going to put that on the board there? The submittal? The graphics. The graphics, yeah. And I started from the north, if I could get your pointer. Not that I like using these pointers. They always make me feel like I have to teach you something. I'll start by saying I hope calling this the Bracken Plan doesn't sound too vain. It's meant to be anything but. It's really humbly presented to you to provide some ideas for discussion. And it's not a plan, it's a concept rather than a plan, again, to provide ideas. It addresses the southbound improvements only, potential improvements. It focuses on traffic, however, it doesn't preclude any of the ideas on the ped bicycle improvements that you've heard here. And starting here, yeah, it's a little hard to see, but anyhow, just to get oriented, north is to the right. The drawings I have that I could show anyone if you came to Town Hall are drawn to 1 40 feet scale. But starting at the north end of this, I'll just mention some key features. We widen this, or at least restripe it. I think you could probably do this with restriping to 2 lanes here rather than 1. You have a bottleneck right here that causes congestion. And then on a bridge across the creek, you would widen and restripe that to 3 lanes, plus the purple there, dark blue, is would be a widened bike pedestrian. This is drawn with 3 12-foot wide lanes and 12-foot head path there. So this will limit, you also have a bottleneck here where the existing 2 lanes merge into 1. Again, this would be 3 lanes. Now, of the 3 lanes, the number 3 lane right here would be an exit only. And if we could flip to the next screen. So that's right here. This would be an exit only down in Mellon.
And southbound traffic on the freeway wouldn't be allowed to exit there. So this would be a barrier, and that would be a barrier. So this would only be for Francis Drake Boulevard to exit there. Now, the traffic coming from Sir Francis Drake onto the freeway would have 2 lanes to merge onto the freeway. And I'd like to say a couple things. You know, we've talked a lot about weaving. I don't think you should just dismiss weaving altogether. Certainly not an ideal situation, but for instance, you have a weaving situation right here in San Rafael, that's northbound 101 between Bellum and Central San Rafael off-ramp. What really creates a problem with weaving is if you have one lane going at a much slower rate than the freeway lane. And that's what you have here right now, where the traffic is getting off the freeway at Pfeiffer, and you have traffic getting on. You have about, I think, about 700 feet there. What I've done with this, and if you could go down to the next slide, this extends that weaving lane, and yes, it is a weaving lane, to about 1,600 feet from the 700. Again, the situation up here on northbound 101 in San Rafael, I think is about 1,700 feet, so you're close to that. I'm not saying that's going to meet Caltrans standards, that would probably require an exception, but it does definitely lengthen that. It does definitely give the traffic coming onto the freeway from Sir Francis Drake enough time to get up to speed, up to freeway speed before they merge into the through lane. And again, it is a weave because here you would have traffic exiting from the southbound 101 traffic would exit down to Warren right here. They'd have to get into that number 2 of the 2 new lanes, come down here. This would split into 2 lanes, one turning right, one turning left. What that does, it does provide, compared to some of the other plans, it does provide a much better access to get to the commercial area here on the west side, or on the east side of the freeway, to that commercial area where Trader Joe's is and whatnot. And then south of that, well, let me talk about this on-ramp from Pfeiffer. So this would be an on-ramp from Pfeiffer right here, which would cross over Warnham, so you wouldn't have an at-grade crossing there. It is an overpass, but you should look at that as maybe a widening of the existing freeway overpass rather than a completely new overpass. I don't think the impact of that would be anywhere near what we saw in the build alternative. And this is drawn a little bit sharp. This is a reverse curve here. I drew that mainly so you could see, I drew that in that configuration more so you could see what's going on underneath it. That could be smoothed out more than what's drawn there. And then anywhere south of this, so this would run into an auxiliary lane, and everything south of this would be the same as the build proposal from TAM. That's an auxiliary lane down the area to maintain the Madera off-ramp. And it does allow for a bus stop area in here that would be direct access from the freeway, and allows for some parking area, commuter parking area in this section. I didn't detail that at all, but I think you do have room to do that there. I talked about the Pfeiffer on-ramp. This, to me, is one of the biggest problems you have out there right now, is this existing Pfeiffer on-ramp. And this does exemplify what I was talking about, where merging traffic can't get up to freeway speed. You're going on an uphill grade here, very short merge lane. It's pretty much impossible to get up to more than 40 miles an hour before you merge in. And that slows down everything in at least that number 4 through lane down 40 miles an hour or less. So it does improve that significantly. Some of the issues with this, I do recognize there could be potential structural issues getting back to the bridge over Corte Madera Creek. That's something that needs to be looked at. We don't want to end up in a situation in Washington State or Minnesota. Protect our bridges. I did mention this would most likely require some exceptions from Caltrans standards. There is a new overpass here, but again, I think visually, if you look at this, it would really, if you're on the ground at this point or on the ground over here, it's visually not going to have much more impact than what you have right now with the freeway overpass. And one other thing, adding this on-ramp does eliminate, and I know this was a concern with some Corte Madera citizens and others, the potential to have an auxiliary frontage road all the way from the Nell and Pfeiffer area down to Madera. So if you built this ramp, there would not be enough room to put a frontage road beside that. Now, if I could just jump ahead, Bill did give me some of the comments that came from the town staff, from the engineers here. And I just wanted to, I'll jump ahead, I'll just mention a few of those things. Some of them I do accept. Certainly the design needs to be designed, and I recognize as much as anyone that the devil's in the details. This is a concept plan. There's structural issues that could arise. But some of these, especially the ones that talk about the weaving, I don't think the weaving's as bad as really outlined in some of these challenging features. I don't think it would impact the traffic on Sir Francis Drake. In fact, I think it would mitigate traffic on Sir Francis Drake certainly compared to the existing conditions. And with that,
1 minute left.
I'll turn it back.
Wow. Thank you.
Okay, our initial assessment, we've identified a number of beneficial features. We acknowledge that it continues to distribute the traffic to the various ramps in the corridor. It widens Sir Francis Drake on-ramp over the creek to 3 lanes. It provides a connection for local traffic between Sir Francis Drake and Nellen, which would allow access to a river highway. And then its design avoids removal of the pedestrian overcrossing. Some of the challenging features that we have observed was that it, although he acknowledges it does increase the weave between the Sir Francis Drake on and the off-ramp at Warnham, we still do have that weave that's out there today, just slightly larger. We do have a new weave that's on the creek crossing going south. We do feel that is a potential issue that we must investigate, because you've now introduced a weave that is on a vertical curve and a horizontal curve. So you got traffic that's going to be going weaving between lanes in that condition. And Caltrans expressed concern with that movement. The 3 lanes on Sir Francis Drake could cause backup on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, impacting east-west travel, depending on the results of that weave analysis. And then the on-ramp of Pfeiffer coming down, we do feel that it will be further south than where we're shown here, which just would create a new weave between the Pfeiffer on and the Madera Boulevard off-ramp. And then the barriers that he shows separating the traffic bound for Nellen with other alternatives that we mentioned today, they do require that additional width to allow that diverging movement.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Okay, any questions for staff or Mr. Bracken? Diane? And then Brad, and then Alice.
Okay. The ramp or the bridge that goes over the creek from Greenbrae currently goes down to 1 lane. We've seen a proposal from TAM for 2 lanes. The Bracken plan has 3 lanes. Marin Deserves Better has 4 lanes at one point. And I'm curious, what is the capacity? What is the maximum number of lanes that's allowed on that with the current seismic limitations?
Structurally, what our initial investigation is that working with our structural engineers developing the 2-lane option that's in the build, we feel that our design will accommodate that with the retrofit that was done back in 1994. When you widen that to 3 lanes, the 3 lanes will fit on the existing girders that are out there now. Our structural engineers are advising we're on the edge, that additional seismic will be required, and the results of that, may require the complete reconstruction of that off-ramp, that on-ramp. With the 4 lanes, that exceeds the width of the vents, and clearly in that realm of reconstruction.
Well, I saw a diagram showing the 4 lanes, and it only exceeds the bent caps if you include an 8-foot shoulder here, and an 8-foot shoulder here, and a 2-foot shoulder here, and a 2-foot shoulder here. I mean, there was, I think, 20 feet of shoulders for 4 lanes. So, can you address what the actual need of shoulders is, especially if we use some kind of a divider like pylons rather than a K-rail?
What we asked our engineers to do is to develop a cross-section using standards. And so that is our starting point.
Okay.
And so in consultation with Caltrans staff, we may get design exceptions, and indeed in the build proposal, we did get some exceptions for those shoulders. But we feel like as a starting point for discussion, we should at least propose that to you.
Okay, so the standard is 8 on one side, 2 on the other? Is that?
I hate to start quoting standards.
Okay, sorry.
Okay, Brad?
Actually,
Could I make one point of
Oh, yeah.
clarification on this concept? The concept would still work with 2 lanes rather than 3. Just, I don't think it would work as well, but you could have, the whole concept would work too.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got Brad, Alice, Gary, and Carla. Maybe we'll check in.
I just want to make sure I'm assuming correctly that this is Dave Bracken's proposal, not not Corte Madero's.
Yes, I did want to mention that, and I forgot this is, and that's another reason why I call it the Bracken plan.
Okay.
It hasn't been endorsed by the town council.
Okay, that's all I
I did review it with them, but certainly not vetted by them.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Alice?
Actually, this is a question for David. So do you have a concept of like where the transit stops and parking would be yet?
I did mark it out very generically, right at the end of Pfeiffer Drive there. It may be hard to see, certainly hard to see on that screen. If you could just point to that. Right in that, call it triangle.
Thank you.
Gary? Oh, you're on that, Katie?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm curious in a broad sense about the weaving aspect. Much has been made of that, and I do recall that the accident rate going south was less than north, south being more of the weaving frequency. So as a non-traffic engineer, I'm having some difficulty assessing the significance of this weaving feature, which is addressed in some fashion by many, let's say, the alternatives we're seeing. So in your assessment, how significant is this weaving? And the fact that Mr. Bracken made reference to San Rafael is right, and I have a little difficulty at times too, but there's a greater span. And so what is your assessment? Help me understand how I should assess this feature.
From what I understand, and I can bring my traffic engineers up, but with the weave, it's all about the distance and the comfort for the driver to move from one lane to the other while the other driver is doing the same thing. So it's really about the distance. In this case, we have 3 weaves from the on-ramp, Sir Francis Drake, to the weave on a vertical horizontal curve. When we come down, we have the existing weave. It's longer indeed, but it occurs between Sir Francis Drake on and Warm off. And then we have the weave from the Pfeiffer on and the Madeira off. And then we have existing weave from Madeira to Tamalpais. So we've got a number of weaves in that southbound.
Yeah, I get that. I've commuted to the city for 37 years, so I sort of fought that fight. But I'm really trying to assess how significant that is, because the trade-off might be, and I'm not suggesting, but it might be a closure. Perhaps the Pfeiffer or Lincoln, or excuse me, Market. so the trade-offs are those features. Am I missing something regarding the weaving? Like I said, there are fewer accidents. I know it's a pain in the neck going through there because I've done that and I've been rear-ended once doing so. I sort of get that. How do we factor that in?
Well, we thought about that, and we took the direction from the working group to assess these proposals as is. So I guess, you said you could close it, well, that is an option. And with your direction, then we could then consider that option with some minor tweaks. And I offer that with any of the other proposals you may wish us to explore.
And it does have an economic impact, certainly. There's an industrial and business area, convenience to the school, et cetera. So, well, I guess we'll get to that. We don't have time for that.
And we want
how you weigh those things.
So we want to support the local agencies.
Sure.
For considering those closures, back when we're talking about the temporary test, we want that reassurance that the locals support that.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Carla?
Okay. Dave, this is a question. Oh, this is a question for Dave. Dave, could you again go over how the plan will help to alleviate traffic backup getting on the freeway?
Well, I think if we could get to the slide to the north, showing the creek. Yeah, again, right here, I see two of the big problems with the existing traffic backups are right here where you neck down to one lane from two to get on. You have two lanes right there where you start that approach and you have one lane here. So this would continue 2 lanes. And here again, you neck down to one lane where there you would have, they're bottlenecks is what they are. And this doesn't completely eliminate it because you do have a weave here. But that weave, you have the vehicles in either of the lanes traveling at relatively the same speed, which makes a weave. That's a big part of the problem with weaves when you have a big difference. Cars going 70 miles an hour here and cars getting on here at 30 miles an hour. That's the big problem with it. And that's why you want to stretch it out as far as you can so these cars can get up to the same speed that they're weaving with or at. You could look at any 2 through lanes on the freeway as being a weaving situation because you have cars going from one lane to the other. That's weaving, but you have them going at the same speed and you have that stretched out for, I'll call it an infinite amount of distance. But again, they're good questions, and I can't tell you what the ideal. Certainly Caltrans had in the highway design manual, I'm sure, addresses that. I don't know what it is, what a minimum length should be on a weave. I did compare it to San Rafael because that's something between Bellum and Central San Rafael. That's something you can drive and feel it for yourself. Not that that's necessarily going to meet the standards. Again, I very much respect the standards that Caltrans has, but that's something you can drive and feel for yourself. Anyhow, that's what I see here is a problem with when I drive it. That's a bottleneck and that's a bottleneck.
Right. So with
this would help to mitigate.
So with that added lane, you're almost doubling the capacity to get
Yes.
onto that. Yeah.
I don't know if I'd say you're doubling it, but yes, you are increasing the capacity. And you're keeping vehicles moving at a constant speed rather than having to slow down to merge in.
Okay.
Being forced to merge in without any distance to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have Katie and then Alice, and then we'll check in and see if it's our time to wrap.
And I'm sorry, Dave, I may have missed something. I really love yours because it's so simple and you just focused on direction. But I have a question, and Bill, maybe you can remind me. In dealing with the southbound, the Sir Francis Drake and the southbound traffic, the weave merge, we've had different proposals doing different things in terms of where they have to weave or change lanes. And for instance, so the traffic coming from East Sir Francis Drake, getting onto the freeway, making the choice, and then for that traffic that wants to get over and get off on Lucky Pfeiffer is having to do its weave or weave crossover with Sir Francis Drake traffic or with the Ross Valley traffic on your bridge, correct?
Correct, but let me, if I could, Bill. Once people get to know that, you have 2 lane options when you, if you're coming on westbound from Sir Francis Drake.
Right.
Down westbound, right
Right.
there. You have 2 lane options. If you know you're getting off at the Lucky Pfeiffer area, you can take that, what I'll call the number 2 lane there, the one to the right. So you're only making one merge with the 1 lane coming on from
Right.
eastbound Sir Francis Drake.
Got it, and it's at a speed where you're you're gonna be closer together speed-wise than they would
Yes.
be. But what I'm wondering is, have any of the proposals that we've looked at, or even could this one be modified to just allow the Ross Valley Sir Francis Drake traffic, Greenbrae to Larkspur, stay local, and not give the option for the southbound traffic from East Sir Francis Drake to get off at Pfeiffer, and force them to get off at Warnham if they want to get off. And I ask that, recognizing that it's a commercial area, but I don't recall the volumes. I can't remember what the volume of traffic was when I'm wondering what's the volume of traffic actually trying to do that? How much of an inconvenience is it, and how much of an impact would it be to the businesses? Because it would eliminate a huge problem.
It's a really good question. Bill can address the traffic volumes. I mean, that takes an origins and destination study that I'm not sure if that's been done in any kind of detail that would recognize that.
Peaks are
But it's a good point. As far as designing it, it's basically increasing the length of that black line you see to the left of the screen there.
Right.
I mean, you could certainly build it with this concept. What kind of impacts would it have on the traffic, especially the westbound flow?
Yeah.
That's a really good question.
Well, and I ask it also, one, because I think it's possibly an option, but also I'm looking at any of the merges that are moved farther up the ramp, the on-ramp towards the west, towards Sir Francis Drake, have the potential to slow that down. It's constriction point again, and I'm constantly looking at the Sir Francis Drake movement, both east and west, and how do each of these proposals impact that traffic flow. And if you're not allowed, if you're taking your southbound 101 traffic and asking it if they want to go Lucky Pfeiffer to go Warnham, then you don't have them also having to cross the freeway there, coming off at Sir Francis Street.
Alice, you're last.
So I have one comment and one question. So when you're looking at really what kind of a safety concern weaving and merging is, you've already said the relative speed of the lanes from which the cars are making the changes and the length of the road over which they have to make it. Wouldn't traffic volume be a variable also? Yes. So that when we look at this, even if it has the potential to make the weave acceptable, we'd also want to be planning for increased travel volumes in the future when we look at what we're going to do. Yeah.
Volume is a concern.
And volume is a concern. And then the other sort of question statement I wanted to ask staff was, it seems to me quite a few of these proposals actually do involve not just widening, but actually building structures in the creek. And that requires mitigation. As part of the cost analysis, is it possible to come up with an estimate of what the cost of mitigation for building in the creek would be, in addition to the costs of building a structure or obtaining right-of-way?
That's a tough one. I think we could probably give you just an order of magnitude. That anytime you're in these environmentally sensitive areas, you're subject to the requirements of the regulatory agencies. And we're finding that they're requiring more and more of our projects that do impact these environmentally sensitive areas. So we could certainly put an order of magnitude associated with the costs of the options you ask us to pursue.
And then we'd add 10%?
At least.
Thank you.
Okay, right here.
This is both a question and a request of TAM staff and Dave. Morning peak period traffic, exiting at Piper Lucky and/or Madera under this proposal. Impacts to Tamil Vista.
That would have to be looked at, and certainly that would be a major concern on my part as a representative.
That's why I'm asking you. That's why I'm
Forget Dave Bracken right now. But yes,
Trying to help you, Dave.
I appreciate it. That would certainly be a concern, and we would want to look at that completely.
Okay, thank you, Dave Bracken. We've kind of ran over on the agenda.
A little bit.
So we were supposed to discuss request of the TAM board, and I'm not sure if people want to do that or defer that to next time probably.
Yeah, the
All
chair
we have
certainly would
left is
accept that.
So the next meeting, we're going to do bike ped, and then I think probably your thinking is what kinds of requests or studies do you want the TAM staff to look into further? And you have to make a request to the TAM board to fund those inquiries and analyses.
Do you know, I would actually appreciate it if the staff could just organize, even from the minutes, the information we got, and if they had recommendations to make, because some of them are pretty obvious, or the ones where we'd have to make a judgment, point out where we'd have to make a judgment. That would be really helpful to me.
A judgment on?
On not the relative cost benefit, but some of the things where they were not like costs for mitigation. That'd be a judgment kind of a, right? We couldn't come up with the number. They can't come up with the exact number, but they have the expertise to make a judgment of what it might be. Is that clear?
I'm not sure. Go ahead. Diane's trying to answer.
Yes.
We received $13,000 from the TAM board to assess these proposals, and the money's all spent.
Okay.
So if you want traffic analysis, engineering, environmental impacts, right-of-way impacts, the combination of bike transit and cost, we'll bring an estimate back to you. Would you like that for all 7 proposals, or do you want to narrow them down?
I think that from going through the minutes, our comments, it seemed like there was some sort of universal questions, concerns that applied to a lot of the projects. And I'd kind of like to see those melded. I have a feeling from the minutes that you, Gina, you'll be able to distill what the things were that we wanted to look into. And as I was mentioning to Diane, like with regards to the cost of the mitigations when you go towards having to rebuild any of those bridge structures, that can be, that same generic information can be applied from one project to the next, I would suspect. But it seemed like there was some universal, there were some questions that had some commonality between the projects, and I think we could be focusing on certain elements of each of these projects. The one thing that I wanted to differentiate, and it's between northbound and southbound a little bit, and I'm not sure if it'd be possible for staff to call out some of the commonalities that seem workable or more feasible, like on northbound or on southbound, like the auxiliary lane going from Tamil Vista all the way up. The auxiliary lane, that was a universal element of several of these proposals, and it seemed like it had some real viability. So maybe to sort of suss out those things, I don't know, would be helpful to me on some of these projects.
Gary wanted to get in maybe. Let's see what he says. Sure. I'll come back to you.
Well, I think Steve is a really good point, and that is helping us, I'm a traffic engineer, so helping us sort out what is feasible, what might make some sense. I don't know if 3 lanes is at all feasible. It might sound, again, informed like myself, it sounds like a good idea, but maybe there's good reason for that not working. So I'd be interested in having staff sort out what is feasible, what are the common features that Katie mentioned that might apply. If there's some of these that, and I'm not suggesting this, but I'd be interested in not only the pros and cons of some of the approaches, but now that you've heard the details and the presenter, if there's some of these ideas that just don't cut mustard, well, let's put them aside so we can focus on that really does. And that may be a hard decision, or maybe but it was, I'm not sure, but help us sort this thing out, it seems to me would be helpful. Again, the cost may be an element. I can't relate to the cost, quite frankly. I don't have a good sense of what the costs are, but if they're way beyond, well, let's not even waste our time on those and boil it down, help us boil this thing down. I do like the one fact, though, that's universal, and that is there's not a big flyover. And I think that's kind of cool. So I appreciate everybody that's put together the alternatives.
With Carlin and Dan.
Okay. The one thing that I would request is in the review that is done, that we can go maybe one step behind just the basic standards of Caltrans and look at certain possibilities that might be very workable with a simple design exception, so that we don't discount some of these proposals. I think it was just incredible, the creativity that went into the proposals we received today.
Dan and then Brad.
In the end, this is going to be a resource allocation exercise, in my view. And if there are ways, building on what Katie said earlier, to group packages or directions of things so that we've got some ordering, that we can then look at how our priorities should guide us, especially with respect to cost. For example, and this is not new, this is kind of groupings that you've seen before: northbound, southbound, low-cost things, bike ped things. There may be decisions at the end where we can all agree on one of those packages and enthusiastically and unanimously recommend it to the town board, as opposed to being divided over everything in terms of what's best. So again, it's going to be a resource allocation decision in the end. But feasibility and affordability, I think, are going to be mostly our guiding principles.
Brad, and then I'll come back to you.
So I think I'm saying something similar to what other people are saying, but I'm not really comfortable right now saying that we should allocate any resources to any options tonight, because I think that would be a waste of time.
Yes.
I think what we should do is we should go ahead and finish listening to the proposals, and then we should develop a framework to make decisions. And once we've made decisions that we think make sense, then at that point we should allocate resources.
Okay.
Good
Is
idea.
that people are yes?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
see that?
yes, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yes.
I have Allison and Diane. Alice,
Why don't you go to Diane first?
Diane.
I just wanted to ask about the schedule for upcoming TAM board meetings and when we need to get requests in for funding the consultants to analyze some of this.
The TAM board meeting is on June 27th, and there is a second meeting, fourth Thursday in July, which I don't have my...
25th. It's the 25th.
25th of July.
Okay. So if we don't get a request in by the 27th, we have to wait until July 25th. And I think that's something we all need to kind of consider. So either we determine what we want the consultants to start analyzing at this meeting, or perhaps maybe 2 weeks from now. But I don't know if we're going to be here till 8 o'clock 2 weeks from now, so.
Yeah.
So my concern was whether any of the bike ped proposals would influence what we want to look at with respect to these roadway and structure proposals, and whether there's a way to come back with the information, some framework at the June 25th meeting that Brad alluded to, the framework he alluded to, that leaves it open enough that we could take into some of the information we'll be developing from bike ped input. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Okay.
So in other words, you all are going to come back next time. You're going to talk about, it seems like there's some global issues that you need to delve into, and then out of that, you'll make some recommendations on what you think needs further analysis and request those funds from the TAM board. Is that correct?
With some framing by the staff, some information from the staff.
Okay? Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and we need to we need to make decisions. And we're getting lots of information. All this information is fantastic. And seeing other options is fantastic. But we need to make decisions because, so I don't know if that means we need to have a way longer meeting or whatever, but that's what I think.
And I just want to, can I add to that? We don't need to make, this is a resource, this is resource-driven, and the entire project, north and south, we do not have the funding for. And so we don't have to agree on a global solution by September 1. And that's one of the decisions I think that we need to make coming up soon, is do we want to focus on, building on what Dan said, we've got some agreement, I think, on some issues, and then we also have to decide what needs more exploration analysis by staff. But some of those items, for instance, if we do want to look at the loop and have that analysis done, that's a part of the southbound solution. And maybe that's something that's a phase 2, and it's not as time constrained as something else. I mean, this is.
And I think it's going to be important in this next meeting and the following one is where you really, the first meeting in July, you're going to have to just discuss how you want to move forward with those pieces. And that's a definite option, is that you carve some pieces off you agree on and you move forward with those. But your time has to be allocated to spend discussing it based on the information that you have, at that point. Okay, I think the last thing is the public comment on open, and you can tell the air's off. It went off at 7:30 and we're supposed to be out at 8, so we are definitely against the wire here.
Can I ask a question? Did Cindy Winterveen yet? I'll ride home with you,
Could I suggest that presenters stick around for a couple of moments so that people can ask them questions while the thoughts are still hot?
Outside.
Outside.
Somewhere nearby.
Okay, right outside might be nice. Okay, are we having the public comment period, Chair?
Yes, I'll open the
open
public
items?
comment for anyone who dares to make a short speech. Yes, over here on the right. Sir?
Yes, there seems to be a major concern about funding. I propose that I personally fund part of this to get this moving forward. The part that I would like to fund is the closing of the Lucky Drive southbound exit. This will immediately do away with the weed. And I will fund this by canceling my Netflix subscription, because this is a $100 solution. You put in the pylons, you close off the exit, and you've done away with the weed. Now the problem is that how do the people from the north get off at Lucky Drive? They take the existing road. So we need additional signage. If they take the road, the Sir Francis Drake exit, they're behind the pylon. It is so elegant and simple. It's all there. We've already paid for it. Let's try it.
Sir, can you give your name for the record keeper, please?
Dr. Lee Greenberg, honorary.
Thank you.
And my credentials is, I own 14 and 18 Lucky Drive. I've been observing this situation for 20 years. I have my checkbook.
Is there any further public comment? Yes, in the back.
Hi, Peter Chase from Corte Madera. I would suggest, as Cam had a grading worksheet and Norman Grisberry had a grading worksheet, that a grading worksheet be created for each proposal for each one of you to respond to. If you had the same list to respond to with each proposal, I think you could get some consensus among how you feel about each proposal, and at least bring that to the table. I would even sit down and create a spreadsheet of detailed options for you to put into a spreadsheet. It would be a simple matrix. You guys get somebody to assemble it, you can all look at it, and have the courage to stand behind the ranking based on that rating. I think that's what a very high level approach needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public input? Yes, over here on the left.
Sebastian Jakovics. I'd like to thank all the presenters today, especially Marin deserves better, Jana, who put this all together. Being the facilitator, I think that we did a wonderful job solving almost all the problems without creating a lot of new ones. The one comment I have about the present plan that the working group really needs to know, the build plan, is you solve a weave, but you create a bunch of new problems, and this has always been the case. And I'd like to also suggest, especially to Mr. Phillips, who is concerns about the weave, is that the Lucky Pfeiffer exit, although there's a discussion about it, is the only A-rated, meaning the best rated on and off ramp in the entire study area, and has the lowest accident rate. Not lower, the lowest. So we keep on talking about this, but the fact is the numbers don't add up, just as Bob Harrison, the former Caltrans engineer, pointed out. So just want to keep that in mind as you guys assess all this. And thank the Red Deserve Better Group.